Yeah.
Yay, event is over. Everyone can leave now. Bye, guys.
Yay, event is
Be sure
over.
to
Everyone
join
can
the
leave
server or
now. Bye,
whatever.
guys. Yay, event is
Be sure
over.
to
Everyone
join
can
the
leave
server or
now. Bye,
whatever.
guys. Yay, event is
Be sure
over.
to
Everyone
join
can
the
leave
server or
now. Bye,
whatever.
guys.
All right, so that old event was out, I bet. Snack is not too pleased with me. We just finished his last event. We're going to start up my stream soon where we're going to run my event, which is Argue by Agreeing. It's going to be a bit of fun, I think. So stick around if you're joining us right now at the beginning of the stream. It'll take us a few minutes to get it all set up, so don't get bored. If you're not saying anything just yet, scrub forward till you find some stuff. It's going to take them a couple of minutes to set up my stage and everything, and then bring some people in. I'll give you an introduction now, though, and that is this is a really fun tool I've been using for a few years, running workshops for people on how they persuade other people. So if you are pitching because you want more budget, or you're trying to get a job interview, or you are trying to convince somebody that a given decision is a bad idea, or if you regularly find yourself in Discord, you're having a furious political debate about the issues of trans people in sport, as I was just listening to in the stage before mine. It's really difficult to manage dissonance. And I don't mean you struggle and I've got the skills. I really struggle to control my dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, this state of mental unease, that kind of, you get your back up when you're arguing and you end up being like, you're wrong, I'm right, stuff you. Oh. And what I've done with this is collate a kind of set of fairly simple, obvious tools that are designed to help both the speaker and the listener manage their dissonance so they can have a more productive conversation, so they can spend more of their time in assonance, understanding one another, hearing one another's arguments as they actually are, and then hopefully at the end reach a conclusion where they might agree. So I'm rugged up here warm on a Sunday morning in Sydney. Going to wait for them. They're going to set up the stage and it's going to be a quite fun event. I'll give another intro once it gets started, but for now I'll go back to the just screen. See you for the event soon. All right, I can see it getting set up in the background there. Be another couple of moments. This Chatterbox server is quite cool. I might drop a link for it now, so anybody watching should be able to click on that. Okay. Okay, looks like I'm a speaker now. But I'm speaking to myself. Which is okay. We'll get there.
So Ryan, is there like a specific topic or?
G'day, g'day. So the idea is not that there's a specific topic; it's that people can bring up and table their own topics. I've got some links I'm about to drop in here, which the idea is they can step up and suggest a topic. Like I want to argue for. I was just hearing in Snacks thing about trans people in sport or any political, religious, any kind of thing, and then their job is to use the tools that I'm going to share with them to try to argue that position. And so it's just sort of a bit of fun. But they're free to choose whatever topic they want.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to use the event chat.
Yeah, I'll mostly use the event chat. What I will do is give people an option to like table what topic they want to come and talk about, because I was like, Ryan ran one with me yesterday and it was good. I just realized that it was sort of a little bit too free form and people are like, what am I doing? What am I talking about? And I probably also need to put like, you need to table a specific topic and argue for that with whoever else is on the panel, and probably put a bit of a time limit on it too, so we sort of can move through a few topics.
Yeah, so kind of like try to establish the grounds of what you're debating or talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so somebody can sort of put a really simple claim in the thing, like trans women are women and should be welcomed into women's sport or something. And we go, great, now we know clearly what we're talking about and what their job is to argue for.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. 3 events in a day.
Has it been? You guys
Apparently
must be
I'm-
exhausted. So it's okay. I've checked this with Ryan, but I realize I should check again. Is it okay that I stream this? Oh, deafening silence.
I don't know the rules, so.
So Worm, yeah, in answer to that question for people that are first come, first served, slightly yes, although I might just sort of reach in to pick out particularly good topics because I think that there are some people who are like, oh, yesterday we had somebody pop in and be like, hi, I want to know how to, I keep arguing with my friends, and was clearly a very young person where I'm like, yeah, okay, boop, see ya. So I might skip slightly to people.
Fellas.
Hello.
Uh,
G'day, Corvo.
hi, Ryan.
Corvo, you're...
Ryan, what's that?
Corvo, you're the perfect person to ask. Is it okay if I stream this?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
Just make sure to include a link to the server in your stream.
Yes, yeah, I've already put that in the chat, and then I
Uh,
put it in the thing. I'll also put it in the description, actually.
how to argue.
Okay, so on mobile, it won't let me send it to like everybody. It lets me send it. But now I'm on my desktop. Go back to announcement.
Okay, we're live. How exciting.
Okay, I don't see the button to publish.
12 already listening to us getting set up. How lovely.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Worm, for setting that up. We appreciate that. If you want to come on
So-
stage, make sure to raise your hand.
So should we maybe start off by reading over these? What are these, like guidelines or recommendations?
For the first time, we're gonna
Sure.
have you maybe just sit back and listen,
Okay.
and monitor the text chat. And if you see anything bad, like make sure to let me know. Thank you.
Alrighty. Should we get going?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome people for joining us, and thank you very much for Chatterbox for hosting this, particularly Ryan for suggesting it, because this is going to be a lot of fun. We had a crack at this yesterday, and I think we're going to have a few more cracks at it before we get it all nailed down. But the idea of this as a Discord stage is a kind of fun, interactive workshop where you can practice arguing points, listen to different people's perspective, and practice using some tools for persuasion so that you can better argue anything in your own life. So it's sort of partly sit back and listen to people potentially get involved in heated political debates if you want. And partly also, if you want to, you can step up and ask to join. So as in terms of how we're going to interact, I've put a link. I guess I might have to say this a few times as we get more people in here. But in the text chat, you'll see I've put a link for the Jamboard. I'm using this. I've got this behind me on my stream where I'll sometimes write down phrases that people say or positions that they're arguing from so we all know what discussion we're having. I can capture particularly useful or persuasive things that, turns of phrase or something. There's also a link for the YouTube and Twitch because I am streaming this. I've decided I want to start streaming these kind of debates or discussions. The gist of the whole thing is that, generally speaking, I think people, and in speaking more specifically myself, I'm terrible at arguing. I'm really bad at it. I find myself continually getting frustrated and angry and experiencing a range of emotions that I think are dredged up by cognitive dissonance that cause me to then sort of compulsively disagree with somebody else. You know, that habit we might have to rejoin somebody else's conversation by going, no, that's not what you know that, or but yeah, which I'm sure isn't just me. And I think that is a symptom of my dissonance getting the better of me, where I think people know what dissonance is, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Cognitive dissonance is this idea that certain thoughts, particularly if they conflict with other thoughts we hold or beliefs we might have, can cause a kind of almost barely perceptible discomfort for us. A lot of people have the idea that it might be you hold two competing ideas about something, and that's cognitive dissonance because you're being a hypocrite. That's absolutely not it. It's becoming aware that two of your views are in some way incompatible. So I'm a good and honest person and I treat people fairly will cause dissonance if I just was really rude to that server. And I then have to sort of resolve that dissonance in some way. And quite often what we do in order to resolve dissonance is a little bit of fight or flight, which is we push back and go, well, they were being a prick, or we run away and we try not to think about it anymore. The problem is if we're trying to understand a more meaningful way to operate within the world, if we're trying to figure out how to better look after disadvantaged people or decide what happens with our home finances, it can be really counterproductive because it just pushes people out of the conversation, gets them I get angry, and as a result, I'm going to get angry at somebody else. It makes things really difficult to manage. So the idea of this as a workshop is to argue by agreeing. And the way it's going to work is like this. I'm going to introduce the idea, and in a moment I'll give a demo for a position I do truly hold. It's quite fun if you do one you do truly hold, but you don't have to. You can argue for a completely ridiculous position if you want. You can argue for something that is the opposite of something you believe deeply. And your goal is to follow these rules. Now, they're really simple rules, but you'll probably see in a moment, even though I train this stuff for a living, really struggle to use them. The base rule is this. Somebody's going to be disagreeing with you. Your job is to agree with them. Find something within what they're saying that is agreeable, that is reasonable, and don't follow with, yeah, I get what you're saying, but. So the key thing here is we don't want to use a word like but, and however is just the same thing, but however is just but in a tuxedo. To create a kind of fulcrum between, well, your idea is good, but my idea beats it. And to go, could these ideas coexist? And you so often will hear this in life where somebody goes, oh, it's really important we get this thing done on time, but it also needs to be under budget. And it somehow can create in people's mind that we either do things, in one way or the other, where it's like, could we do both? Could we hit that deadline while staying under budget? It quite often creates that disconnect between two ideas that might otherwise coexist. So the main rule we're going to be looking at in this scenario, in this workshop is, can you use yes and? Can you agree with what the other person's saying, add to it, and both of those points be true? Other tools that will work really well are be charitable in your interpretations of somebody else's argument. So if somebody is going to come up and argue against you, we'll end up having a panel of people who are all going to be shouting disagreement at one another. Your job is to not straw man their argument, not to sort of pick at things that they might be saying or look for the exceptions, look for the inclusions, look for the bits where you're both right. Could both your points be valid? It's kind of saying the same thing as the next one, really. Appealing to shared values or goals can be really useful as well. So, we all want what's best for children at the end of the day, or it's important that we're fair. These kind of statements can be really good and unifying because they get everybody back to the point of going, yeah, that's true. All right, let's agree with that. We don't use that phrase in terms of, well, I want to do what's fair in a way that implies your suggestion is unfair. It's about it's something we can agree on. Another really disarming technique can be to ask a question. If you are taking an uncharitable first glimpse at what somebody else is saying, if to you it immediately sounds sort of exclusionary or racist or silly, ask them a question. Challenge your own perception of that. Challenge your own dissonance that's gotten up and it makes you want to go, well, they're silly, their point is silly, to dig a bit deeper, to go, hang on, what is it you really mean by that? Anything you can do to get them on side or build rapport will also work. So making them laugh, get them on side, even compliment them. That's the gist of it. So I'm going to do a demo, and what I'd like people to do to join in is you don't have to be aware that your positions conflict in order to experience cognitive dissonance. That's an interesting idea, nice warm dad. Somebody's joined in the chat. This is one of the ways you can join in. So event chat is just for random thoughts about it. There's another channel called Questions, which I'll try to keep my eye on, but maybe also the mods will help me with that. And then there is one that says Ask to Join. If you would like to step up to the stage and practice using these tools to argue for a position, particularly one you think it's important that people hear about, then you can use the Ask to Join. What I want you to do is not just say that you'd like to join, but also what kind of a position are you going to argue for. And it can be anything. I don't care how mundane or deeply important, religious or political. I'm not going to get bothered by it. I guess there might be terms of service things we need to be mindful of. Is that the case, Mods?
Yeah, definitely. Just try to follow the TOS and let's keep it PG-13 and have a good time.
Awesome. Okay, so Mods, your job to show what the panel's going to be. So Jay, Worm, Ryan, and Magnus, if you're all here, is I'm going to present my first argument. Your job is to utterly tear it apart. You can be as terrible as you want. You're not bound by these rules. You're the peanut gallery. And your job as the peanut gallery is to try to get me to say the word but, or to try to make me argue. You can do that by insulting me, by deliberately misunderstanding me, by taking uncharitable...
This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, I thought you might like it.
I can't even bring myself to do it because it's not in my character, but I will try.
So you don't have to. What I would say though is anything that's outside your normal character is worthwhile leaning into, even just to test it and go, well, is this something I could get some benefit from? But Jay, if you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable.
I'm a go. I just can't. I was just talking about me dissing you or ad hominem.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you don't have to ad hom if you don't want to. Just look for bits of the argument that you think sound preposterous. I think there's quite a few people who generally disagree with this argument, so I probably should make it easy. So yeah, you can misunderstand me, you can throw facts and figures at me, you can make up studies, and you're trying to get me to say but, or you're trying to get me to argue back with you. What you want to listen out for, because I might say it without noticing, I train this stuff for a living to corporates and I still catch myself all the time making this mistake. You want to hear me using but in the construction of, yeah, your idea, but my idea. So it's not just a sort of you're not allowed to use the word but at all. It's particularly using it in where I feel like I'm putting your idea down. So if at any stage you feel like I'm disagreeing with you or something, you can make a buzzer sound if you want. You get the gist of it?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So my position is that we should drastically reduce intellectual property ownership and the idea that humans can own ideas, particularly the idea that humans can buy an idea like a commodity and fence it off so other people aren't allowed to use it. And I mean this in terms of books. I think that books should very, very quickly cross into public domain. I think that music should much more quickly cross into public domain. And more crucially, I think that science that has been paid for by governments and partly by unis, but certainly a lot by us, shouldn't be sent off to scientific journals and paywalled and hidden from us. I think that if you create something that's great, you should be able to earn as much money as you can for a short period of time, maybe 5 or 10 years, and then that crosses into the public domain where you might get decreasing amounts that you earn for that, or but certainly you no longer have control, that nobody else can cut it up and make a mashup. No, that would be allowed now. People can mash up your songs as much as they want after 5 or 10 years without paying you any royalties.
Okay. Jay, did you want to go first? Or
No, you go first.
okay. So like it sounds like you want us to break the Constitution or something. Isn't it written in the well, for Americans that it's protected for 15 years or something like that?
Yeah, so if it's a constitutional thing, I think it's really important. The Constitution's a really powerful document, particularly for Americans. I wish we had something like it here in Australia. And if there is something like that in the Constitution and it's said for 15 years, that is absolutely something I would consider to be a reasonable amount of time. So I write a book for the next 15 years, which is probably only a portion of the rest of my life. I receive benefit from that, but then anybody, because I actually have written a book, a self-help book, and then after that point, anybody should be able to just download a PDF of my book and print it out however they want. I think, yeah.
Would we get all of the great inventions and content that we have if people aren't going to be rewarded for a period of time?
It's certainly something. I think it's a really, really important thing to consider, which is, it sounds like what you're saying is, are we going to get as many inventions if we're not profiting from them as much? Is that the idea, Ryan? So yeah, absolutely. I think. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it's absolutely an important one, and it's certainly something we would need to look at. That if we were to implement a policy like that, we went, oh wow, there suddenly is a cooling off of productivity or creativity in these certain fields because these companies who used to come up with these patents and hold these patents no longer see any benefit in doing the R&D like that. I could certainly see that being something we would need to consider. Would you consider that if we were able to show evidence that it seems to boost creativity, so if the contrary argument were true, do you think that might influence where you stand on this, Ryan?
It might if it was a quality study or something.
Because there's
But
some
it
interesting.
sounds like you just want to kill Mickey Mouse.
I mean,
You-
don't we all want to kill Mickey Mouse a bit?
Will be dead. You are trying to kill Mickey Mouse, and it stops today.
I think in some ways I do want to kill Mickey Mouse. I think that is an accurate representation of my position. I consider Disney to be this absolute monolith of lobbying power that has pushed the can down the road further and further, where it used to be 50 years with the idea you held IP or you held that trademark or whatever for the natural course of your life. And well, not trademarks are different, but you held that IP for the course of your natural life and then that expired. Whereas now, thanks to Mickey Mouse, that stuff stays out of the public domain. Nobody else is allowed to use it or mash it up, and they can get chased to court if they do. So I think that is an accurate characterization of my position. I think that the challenge is there's lots of examples of where it does boost creativity. So one of the ones is the aeronautics space, where the Wright brothers first flew and they were lying on top of this crappy plane. They're risking their lives to be able to be the first people to really do a sort of proper stab at flight. And then they spent, from what I understand it, the rest of their careers just chasing down patents and stopping other people doing anything. And as a result, the US just stagnated, didn't go anywhere in terms of aircraft design. And it wasn't until the government stepped in and said, this isn't working. We're still going to pay the creators, but we're going to do it in a different way. My understanding is they kind of created a pool where they grabbed all of the IP. They said, we own the IP and we're going to decide how much you get paid for it. And now that you did have access for new companies to come into the market and get that wing design and slightly improve it, you then had this explosion of America becoming the best place to get your planes from. So if it boosts creativity, could it work?
Yeah, I suppose it could.
Somebody's saying you're bad at being inflammatory.
Should we bring some people
Yeah.
on the stage, or did you want to close that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's close that one off. Do you get the gist, for those listening, like Ryan, Jay, and Magnus, do you get the gist of trying to agree wholeheartedly with the substance and sentiment of what somebody's saying so that you can agree with them, so that you can make your point?
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
I think I might understand.
Excellent. Okay. So we can help mod people when they do it. Our job is to hear them if they're saying but or arguing back. I'll post the rules as well in the event chat so people can get the gist of what I'm doing on the Jamboard. Also, remember the Jamboard link is... am I able to post? Yeah, I posted it twice.
Importantly, we need you, so you don't lose this, you have to join the server, because we're also having a conversation after the event. So make sure to join the server, boost it. You might lose us if you don't. I don't want to get DMs like, oh, how do I join the server, like I always get. Like, join it by pressing the plus button, if you could, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it looks like Sauce wants to come up. Should we bring him up?
Sure, absolutely. What topic are they coming in on?
That's a good question. My Discord is now freezing.
Yeah, mine is too. We might be right about to have some connectivity issues, I'm thinking. I'm unable to scroll and click.
Mine's is just fine. Who did you say wanted to come up?
I think we had a request from Source, wanted to come up and argue for a position.
I only see Junaid IRF.
Well, we can bring Junaid up then, and then Source can come second.
Is your Discord fixed writing? Mine has not.
Mine is still hung, but I'm still able to hear you, so I guess we can push on for a moment.
I can't even unminimize the app. This is crazy.
Junaid?
Can you hear me?
G'day, is that Junaid?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So basically,
So what you can do now is if you have a position you'd like to argue for and convince ourselves.
I got him. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
It do be like that sometimes. We had a
Yeah,
huge
that-
event yesterday, and some silly billies joined. I'm sorry for that.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm always just interested in what angle they go. They're like, I'm going to try and troll this live event. And it's like, I'm going to do it by playing some loud music.
Yeah. Well, they
Yeah, they
get their
like
like
that, so-
They get to come
1.3
up and
seconds of
make
fame.
noises.
You know. Yeah, like 1.3 seconds. It's like half a second to react, and then half a second to react. You know?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sauce wanted to come up. Yeah, I think-
No. Oh, that wasn't sauce.
No, that wasn't Sauce. That was Junaid IRL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm happy that wasn't sauce. I felt super betrayed. Okay, we're gonna open the request to speak.
Excellent. So we get the idea. Just so anybody who's joined us, because I can keep seeing that listening going up and down. What we are doing is a sort of workshop to practice agreeing while arguing with somebody. So agreeing with the fundamental points they're stating. I keep posting links from this Jamboard I'm using, a picture frames from this Jamboard I'm using, and if you scroll up to the top of Junaid will argue why it is possible to earn money easily. That's an interesting one. I like that, Junaid. It sounds like a recruitment pitch for an MLM. What would you do if your position is... Oh, that's a great question. We'll come back to that one, Nick. What would you do if your position is diametrically opposed to that of your interlocutor? That is absolutely the goal of it. So I'm going to put that question up on my question slide, which is 5 of 6.
Great. Is sauce gonna do it with somebody or?
All right. Sauce, you here?
Sauce boy. Okay. If you're if you're on mobile, swipe up from the bottom and change your speaker output to speaker. Otherwise, we're gonna bring somebody else up while you're
I
fixing.
heard him for like a quick second. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, let's get.
My magic coffee
Yeah.
cup.
Hello, Ia.
Yeah. What are you going to argue for, Ia?
Yeah. Is it a yeah?
Is that a weeb?
What do you think?
So, I got a very arguable question.
Sure.
What do come first?
What does...
An egg,
Okay.
an egg or a chicken?
Perfect. And which position would you like to take on that? That the egg comes first or the chicken comes first or some other position?
I think the chicken comes first.
But it doesn't. It clearly comes from the egg first.
Well, I'm just basing on a Bible, but
But
research says that
What?
an egg doesn't.
He said, but
yeah. So go back. How do I say your name? Thank you for stepping up, by the way. Good on you.
What?
Yeah, your name. What's your? I'm not able to see any of the tags at the moment. My Discord is super frozen.
I think E is her name.
E, right. G'day, E. So go back to that one because you said the Bible tells me but studies or science or something like that. Try to use the word and. So go back to that and I'll say, I'll start off with my rude interjection, which is, but it's clearly the egg that comes first. Go for it.
Research shows that it doesn't. An egg doesn't. It can't exist without something. It has some chemical or something that makes an egg, but it can't be made if it doesn't have a chicken.
So it can't be made if...
So you should be able.
Go on.
You should be able to agree that everything has a beginning, though, right? And if everything has a beginning, how would the chicken, just come out of thin air? If the chicken came first, where did it come from?
I think that's
Wait, what? Go
I
ahead.
think
go ahead.
chicken
That's a question.
is from an evolution of a bird.
I think the chicken is an evolution of a bird. Why do you think that?
Oh my god. Jay, why are
She's
you
still there?
Okay. All right. So this one's getting
Change the topic.
sure thing. Okay. So that's getting a bit stilted, but we get the gist of it now. Magnus has said he's got a proposition. What's your proposition you want to table for us, Magnus?
So, I have a claim that I want to bring forward, and that is that people's rights to have children should be restricted.
People's all the great. So people's rights to have children should be restricted. Oof, I like this one. It's a tricky one, right? So I'm going to start making a new slide. If anybody's following along on the Jamboard, it's slide 4. Magnus's claim is people's right to have children should be restricted.
Should be restricted, yeah.
So excellent. So as a reminder of the rules, Magnus is bound by the rule of using yes and to agree with this. Us, the rest of the panel, we're the Peanut Gallery. We are not bound by any rules. We can argue and be as rude as we want. We don't need to present our own views to argue back against Magnus. So go for it. Give us your opening pitch, Magnus.
So, I think there's a conflict of interest when you have people that want to take children away from people that are neglecting to raise the child.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I think it's unfair on the child to have to experience that, just to have that proven. So I think there should be some sort of a test or something, or some sort of a process to make sure that you are at least partly able to raise the child without neglecting it.
There should be some sort of a test. Is that test going to just end up becoming eugenics? Isn't there a risk that you're going to end up saying, right, there are certain people, because they're bad at passing this test, you might find that you go, oops, we accidentally wiped out a racial group.
Yeah, but then again, if you look at when children are taken away from their parents...
Go back,
there
sorry,
needs to
Magnus.
be a certain-
Pause, Magnus. You said, yeah, but...
Oh, okay.
So go back. I said, isn't this going to end up leading to eugenics? You might wipe out a whole race of people.
So can I say no?
You've got to find what you agree with in my sentiment.
Yes, I agree with you on the possibility that it might happen. I would suggest looking into when children are taken away from their parents, like child protection services and stuff like that. They have some sort of guideline to gauge, like if a parent is able to raise the child. So I would probably use that metric for the test.
Okay. What else from the Peanut Gallery? What other arguments do we have?
From me?
No, we're arguing with you. So I was saying it could lead to eugenics, and you're saying look at when children are taken away from their parents. So what would be in the test? I guess that's what I would want to know. What are the things that would be in this test? Would it be income?
No, I wouldn't say income. I would be more about like your general awareness of like taking care of a child. So ask people if they're aware of like their children's rights and stuff like that, and to make sure that they're aware of like laws and regulations about raising children, just so they are aware. And I think also just showing up for like a presentation or something about children's rights is just showing that you're able to show up for something is in and of itself a good test, to see if you're able to raise the child, because often like failing to like clean them, because I used to work in a kindergarten, so I've had first-hand experience of like child neglect and how these cases go through and stuff like that. And I'm really looking at this from the perspective of the child, because they're often having to live with bad psychological effects from the whole process. So I think my idea would be preventative of that.
But it's our God-given right to have children. I should be still able to have a child even if I neglect it and don't feed it and it dies, that's my right.
Is that God-given right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But I said it again.
Good work though. Well done on catching yourself. That's part of what this is as a tool, is to recognize when you're saying it. So good, go for it.
But when you say that, would you also say that it is the child's, like, your right as a child to be taken care of properly so you have a prosperous life?
Awesome. Yeah, very well done. So this is a really good way to do it. So instead of taking me at my argument, which by the way, I don't agree with, I don't think we've got a God-given right to bear children badly, to go, absolutely, some things have rights. And the rights I'm looking at are the rights of the child to live a full and purposeful life or something like that. Yeah, so you've got exactly the gist of it, which is rather going head on at my assertion that I've got a right to have that kid, you go, let's look at the rights of the kids. So you kind of sidestep the point I was making so that we're not butting heads. So you've exactly, by asking that question, it shows you've got the gist of it.
Yeah, I like it, actually. It's good.
What do you like about it?
The whole butt thing, I don't know, it just got me thinking a bit more about how I'm approaching things, you know?
Got you thinking about how you're approaching things in what way? What did it make you think about that?
Because there, I felt like I was not attacking your point directly to I'm trying to implement SE into a lot of what I'm doing. So like trying to not get people defensive, you know, when you're talking to them, because I have this, like you were talking about how you're bad at doing this. I'm also like this in public, you know, with friends and stuff like that. I often just get heated in arguments and stuff like that. And often afterwards, I feel like I did it wrong, you know, but it's just some kind of automatic switch that just gets flipped. You know?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? It's we can be. I think that one of the things that it makes me wonder is, does this make me worse at reasoning things at persuading people on things that I care more deeply about? So is there an inverse relationship between my need to convince you and my ability to convince you that, like, if I don't care, I might be able to bring you around on it because I can manage my dissonance and not say but if I really care and I'm like, how dare you, I end up using it more. Excellent. What are the rest of our... Good, I'm glad, Magnus. What do the rest of our panel think about Magnus's arguing? What do you think he did well?
He caught himself pretty quickly after the first try. So that indicates that he's a fast learner. So I admire that.
Great. Excellent.
I also like how he formulated his argument throughout the entirety of the example that was being given. So props to you, Magnus.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and while the event is going on, make sure to invite your friends, and maybe you can bring them up on stage.
Yeah.
And do this with them. Yeah, grab your buddies.
Grab your buddies, bring them in. So we've got Junaid asking, wanting to pitch us something about earning money easily. I've got to put Magnus's name on that before I forget. And then we've also got Mogical, who wants to argue that Australian and British people get undeserved credibility in the US because of their accent, which is also an interesting position to hold.
Just put on a nice watch and a suit and tie and a British accent, and you got that job.
Actually funny.
Okay, so I've invited Junaid up to speak. G'day, Junaid. Welcome to the panel.
You invited the troll back up. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
No.
Wait, is that the troll?
No.
Yeah.
It is. Okay, please, let's remove.
It's okay. Next time he trolls, just ban him. No, give him a chance.
Oops.
Oh,
If he
okay.
trolls, if he trolls,
Okay, we're
just
gonna
ban
give you another chance, buddy.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm right clicking.
Don't disappoint us.
Yeah. It is easy to earn money because you can literally freelancing services on internet.
We can't hear you.
Freelancing services on the internet.
And you can literally CS:GO trading scheme. Bro.
Alright, I'm banning him. So there's a form of trolling. It's a form of trolling called where they just basically come on and waste time and they mumble or they like. It's a very sophisticated form of trolling.
It is a bit better, isn't it? Where you're like, is this somebody who's like not so good at
I know.
enunciating and maybe not so bright, or is this somebody who is bright and could speak clearly, who just wants to see how long they can stay there and just sort of run
Exactly.
out the goodwill of anybody on the panel, going, "Oh, I don't want to boot them if they are a bit of a mumbler."
You got it. You're a smart man.
So what about, we've got 3 other people asking to speak. We've got Samantha, Willow, and Kid is a great father. Are they and Moonpie, which is a new member. Let's go with Willow, member with roles, because I'm just going to guess that they're less likely to troll us. Is that a good guess?
Yes, it is.
All right, Willow, step up. Tell us what you're
Yeah.
going to convince us of.
Alright, hello. I'm doing this while I'm wrapping Father's Day presents, so you're gonna hear a little bit of rapping. Anyways, so I've actually discussed this topic before, and I want to see if I can do this, like, in, like, a way that, you know, that you're trying to, like, do. So, one of the topics that I've always brought up with a bunch of my friends is whether or not we can successfully have free healthcare within the United States, because that is a big topic amongst liberals and conservatives, and I lean more towards the side where it's a lot harder. And one of the things that I always say is that we have what is it? I don't know if it's Switzerland or Sweden. I don't know which one it is, but they have managed to somehow pull it off, and that's the country that always seems to, Nordic countries. They're
the same anyway.
Brought up. But they always seem to be brought up when I'm talking about this topic, and I always say, well, you're talking about, you know, countries that are, I guess, a lot smaller in population.
So
versus like, you know, like the U.S. population.
So the argument is, it sounds like you're saying it will be hard to. I haven't heard you say it would be a bad idea to, or it would be in some way morally corrupt or something to implement free healthcare in the US. Go on.
It wouldn't be a bad idea. It's just whether or not could we pull it off, and that's one of like the things, or rather, like, is it worth the time and energy of the United States to put, you know, the money towards the free healthcare and focusing on that versus other things? Because
so if we looked at it at an individual level and we said, what if we use that same model for an individual? Here's this one person sitting here, and he just today could have a small surgery that would be quite expensive, $5,000 or so, which will nip out a tumor that in 10 years' time will kill him, or 2 years' time will kill him. And then would we use that same logic to go, well, it's going to be quite costly, does have a lot of cancer now, you know, or is that the only way to calculate it? Because I would think that another way to calculate it would be to say, would it end up saving us money in the long run?
I'm just sorry, I'm reading the chat as well. The thing with, you know, like China, Russia, Canada all having free healthcare, although it's already been done, the thing is that if you look at the doctors that are, you know, present, do they have the best doctors that they could possibly have? Because doctors are a lot of money. You go through the, you know, universities, you go through the education, you have to pay, you know, you have to pay them huge salaries. And can the United States, with everything that we're already, you know, buying with our exports, imports, can we support free healthcare with the same doctors and the same expectations that we have now? Do we have enough funds to do that? And
so if we did have the same funds to do that, you would be in support of it. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay. So if I were to impress upon you the fact that healthcare is in fact cheaper. So yes, it's very expensive to get healthcare in America at the moment. To get a really good surgeon is very difficult, and it's super expensive. If you look at charts of drugs, they are crazy expensive compared to the rest of the world. Whereas the rest of the world, because it has, the UK has the NHS, Australia has Medicare, Sweden, all of those places have it. At some stage, they've had to implement it. They weren't born with free healthcare. At some stage, they've implemented it, and for all of those countries, they find the cost of treatment is much, much, much cheaper. And as a result, it's also typically more effective because people go to the doctor sooner. They don't wait like they do in America often for it to be an emergency issue where now I've actually got to go to the emergency room. They nip it in the bud because going down to the doctor is free and won't put them in years of debt. So if it was cheaper, if I could convince you that it was cheaper, would you be willing to change your position on this? Or is there something else? Is there something else that's holding you back from changing your position on this?
I mean, when I think of free healthcare, I'm more worried about like, will I still get the same quality of I guess care that I would be provided
Really?
if we didn't have that free healthcare. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think it's a really important point, which is, would I get the same quality of care? It's not just about whether it gets cheaper, because I think the point you're making is really valid, which is, sure, I can make it cheaper. You just get shitty care. You just get somebody who's not very good at their job. So if it was the case that I could... Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I feel like if we don't, it's kind of like a repeating factor. Like, if you don't get the same quality of care, then your health problem might not be solved, and you would just keep going back to the doctors over and over and over again. And then at that point, it's just, you're just wasting money. Would it be,
absolutely.
What's the right word?
So what about this? What about if we got the same quality of the care? In fact, we were able to improve the quality of care, not by necessarily getting better surgeons, but by getting more timely healthcare. And I'm not saying this is the case. I don't really know the stats on it. But if I could get more timely healthcare so that people got it sooner, and that as a result costed us a bit less, and if I said, by this being a universal thing that everybody's got, they spend more of their life at their desk. They will work for longer, because if you get a bit of a back problem, you can go to a doctor, go see a physio a chunk of times until you're well, and then you're back in driving the bus. Instead of, I've got this existing health condition, it's hard to get on an HMO, hard to get a job at all, I'm limping my whole life, so I'm more likely to end up on welfare or relying on the kindness of friends and family and potentially even strangers. So if I said it might be difficult to make the case that it would cost more, it could massively boost the economy because we've got more people working harder and longer.
Yes.
Would that convince you at all?
Yeah. It would, actually. It very much would.
Good on you.
I think, pretty much, yeah.
Do you think it without me?
It's always a question.
Yeah, sorry, I was speaking over you. That was very rude of me.
No, you can continue. No.
Good. Awesome for saying yes, it would. Good on you for that, because this is the challenge often we have with these debates, right? Where we hold a position which we believe to be principled, and therefore we've got good reason to go, I'm not just going to change it on a dime. And that can make us stuck in position. So good on you for saying that. And I'm not pretending I have evidence that it would be cheaper, that there's better healthcare outcomes, that it would boost the economy. Would you say that there is reason to the argument? It seems like a well-reasoned argument. Devoid of data, I don't have evidence that it could boost the economy.
Why I don't?
No, I more mean my argument that it could possibly boost the economy and make sort of overall outcomes better. Do you think that, devoid of any evidence, I've not provided you any evidence to suggest that, but do you think it seems like a reasonable argument?
I mean, yeah, it seems like a very reasonable argument that if we can provide free healthcare and it does boost the economy, that I would support it a lot more than I do currently.
Excellent. All right, let's do you have any final points on this topic before we sort of pull out into the matter of discussing the discussion?
0.
And so now let's pull out and talk about the discussion. How was that as a discussion for you? Have you regularly, Willow, have you regularly chatted with people about this sort of free healthcare issue? Or in the past?
I have in the past. I was very fucked up for doing it.
You were what for doing it?
I was very high while I was talking about it before. Not this time.
I bet that worked
but the
wonders.
Last time I was.
Yeah, right. And so how did that conversation go?
Actually, no. I completely won that debate. He was like, "Yeah, okay."
Good. Okay.
But again, it was with a person that wasn't very knowledgeable in economics and politics, which I guess worked in my favor. But yes, I do actually have a discussion with that. I've discussed that with my siblings a lot. So yes, this isn't a new topic.
Excellent. So then to the panel or to everybody, what are your thoughts about it? Thoughts on the topic or in the discussion?
What I would only advise is that, it's she actually did pretty good. So
Yeah.
so my only issue is, the length.
Sure.
It did take you a minute to sort of formulate your thoughts and what you were going to say, which is okay. It happens all the time. The thing is, when you're having a discussion like this one, my main thing is preparation. It's very key when it comes to this stuff. And even though this is only a format, it's like it will amaze you how preparation can work in your benefit, especially when it comes to serious discussions like healthcare, because you'll actually be ready to have this discussion with somebody who actually might be in opposition to what you are arguing for. So my only thing is, if you're going to have this discussion, it'd be best to be more prepared for the issue. Other than that, if I were to grade you, B+.
B plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think if we care deeply about a topic and we know we're going to go in for it, I think absolutely it's a good idea to be well prepared. I also think it can be useful to be able to weigh these ideas. Sometimes it can be, I find it in some ways sometimes easier to do it devoid of facts, because I can pose a question where I go, if this were the case, would that change your mind? And I don't have any of those stats and stuff to hand because I haven't done the research. In that case, I can sometimes find it easy to be like, hey, perhaps. Whereas if I know I just read that study, I'm sometimes like, no, read this, god damn it, which is not so effective. Yeah, good. Thanks for stepping up, Willow. Let's chug through a few more. Let's see whose hands up. I know we've got in the asked to join. We've had Kid is a great father. How kids are affected leaving their household and being in a household with an abusive parent. Wow, that sounds like a heavy topic. Let's go. Let's jump into that.
What was the topic again?
It's about.
I'm trying to multitask because I'm playing Smash Bros while I'm in this, so like I'm trying to pay attention.
That's right. All good. We've got Kid is a great father, and his is about, to read it out word for word, how a kid is affected from leaving the household and being in a household with an abusive parent. You here with this, Kit? I've sent you an invite to join.
He's
Did I
in.
join? Hello?
Cool.
Yep,
Yep.
he's
G'day,
in.
Kit.
Hello. I would like to start off saying I was kind of excited to join because I did the project on this for my end of the year, so I'm kind of invested in this.
Okay.
So how exactly do we start off?
So you can present a simple, clear proposition, which you then can argue for. It's going to be our job to argue against you and try to get you. Our job is to try to get you to say the word "but" or to disagree with us. We don't have to present our own views. We can just tell you what we think or make stuff up. And your job is to stay on that same path of, if I click back to it, and I'll also post this in the chat again, the general rules or guide, they're more like guidelines, of agreeing with this. Agree and add, accept and add. It's a basic, like, this is just sort of very similar to improv, if anybody's done improv. All right, you ready to go, Kit?
Yep, I'm ready.
Um,
So my business, huh?
Yep, go for it.
All right, but my proposition is that like being in the house with a parent and like being separated from said parent can be equally as worse, because like at a young age you need your mother, and it's studies have shown that kids losing their mothers have often grown up as worse off as if they had like a stable household with a parent in it. And a majority of serial killers didn't have mothers growing up or had an abusive mother, and they tend to have that loving bond with their mother, like how you suck in your mom's teeth, that bond that you don't get from your father till later on in life. So I feel like going into adoption and could be worse off because you're in a home where you don't know these people and considered you're brought in suddenly and don't know these people, so it can end up with this worse off result than staying in a house with an abusive parent, because at the end of the day, you still have people in the house that love you. It's just like they have issues themselves that they need to work out as well.
Sure. So it sounds like what you're saying is staying in the home is bad, but also being removed from the home can also be bad.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you have
what
a...
would you propose?
Go on, Jay. Yeah. What do you propose? That was going to be my question.
That there should be an alternative to like being sent with a alternate parent figure that wouldn't necessarily tell you all the bad things your parents have done to you, more or less take your mind off of that and get you into a loving household, because the answer can't always be meds and therapy. It can be like a loving, stable household that you would need in the first place.
Yeah, could be.
So what you just suggested was something that would involve CPS, which is heavily involved with our foster care system, at least in America. So
no, but like CPS can also be what's called an issue as well, because certain parents react as if, oh, I'm going to go to jail, so therefore I'm going to do worse to this child. Like certain cases, like Gabriel Fernandez, like his teacher called CPS and had them come to the house, but they were deterred by doing a bad job of investigating, seeing that Gabriel was asking these questions, yet they were doing their job and to investigate why he was talking like this, and then really going further into parents, and then ended up dead the next week. Like,
sure, yeah, it's a very difficult issue to go, what can we do with this kid? Would you agree that it's it would be difficult as well to find that alternate parent figure that you're talking about? So that, I'm guessing you're thinking like it could be an uncle or a grandparent or some sort of responsible adult who might already have a relationship with this kid. Would you say that in itself could also present issues, that person might, I think we can immediately imagine some of the risks in that situation?
Yeah, that's why I feel like background checks should go definitely into adoption, because adoption is very loose to a certain extent, and like how there can be drunks, what's it called? Drunks, drug addicts that are recovering and they feel like they're in a stable mindset to where they can have their own child. But I feel like there wouldn't be complications if there's a family member involved, because if there's an alternate family involved, there's a certain type of bond they share with their family member. And in some cases, CPS taking the child out of their household and not sending them with an alternate family member and just letting them see them is, I feel like, a mistake.
Right, okay. So I'm trying to think of a way to make you argue on this, but it's a very touchy topic, so I've been quite nice about it. So I'm going to be rude now, just to help you manage this situation, but I'm not expressing thoughts I really believe in, and I want that to be noted if somebody's going to clip this. I think it's better just to remove the kids and to put them in the foster system, because at some stage we've got to focus on efficiency here. And unless we want to fund the CPS to have world-class mediators going out to every situation, they're going to just regularly just have to do a gut sort of first reckoning and go, do I think this house is safe? And if not, whisk the kid off to a home so that we can move on and just efficiently deal with these bad parents.
But that's the thing, though. Like, they're just whisking them off in different households, and they're moving from house to house, not having a stable household, and then always having to get used to a different area.
So I agree with what you said. It sounded like you started with the word "but." Is that true? I think you might have. I'm trying to remember. Go again. Peanut Gallery. Is that what happened? Do we hear "but"? Hi, Maya. Thank you for subbing.
I didn't hear a but in that statement, but I saw someone report a but earlier.
Did they?
Yeah, but it sounded like a sentence that could just as well have been like, but because he said like in the beginning, so I would say that it kind of sounds like it, but.
Sure. Okay. So, good one. I like that one. I think that was a good discussion. Gets also into a deep topic. I think. Yeah. Let's wrap that one up there. What are your final thoughts on that? If you had it, because this sounds like a topic that's important to you, kid. What would you like people to take away? What message would you like them to think about, or action would you like them to commit to? Kit, you still here with us?
Kit, if you don't know, you're muted.
Let's check also the ask to join while Kit thinks about that. Moonpie, administering drugs for mental disorders should be a last resort for therapy. Oh, there we go. There's an interesting one. And then I also saw whether or not it's ethical to purchase something from a person or establishment that isn't deemed as such. That's an interesting one, right? So we'll go to Joy-Con after Moonpie. Moonpie's been in the queue for a while. Moonpie, do you want to... Oh, there you go. I'll invite Moonpie to speak. Kit, are you still with us? I just wanted to hear your last thoughts on that because it was a really good and interesting topic. Okay. Moving on. Moonpie, would you like to put your hand up? Can we drag them to the stage? Oh, there we go. I'll invite to speak again. I think she somehow popped from the top of the list to the bottom.
Hello there.
G'day, Moonpie.
Good day. How are you?
Good. So tell us your position that you're going to be talking about, which it sounded like it was about administering drugs. Let me go back.
Administering drugs for cases of mental disorders. And I believe that should be a last resort.
Excellent. Okay.
In cases of therapy.
Okay, Moonpie. Great. Tell us a bit about it.
So in many cases, such as with ADHD in young children, a lot of children, especially, boys, they tend to be overdiagnosed with ADHD because, they tend to have a little more energy than other children and girls. And in some cases, well, in the majority of cases, a lot of psychologists or psychiatrists will see them. They go through a few sessions and they will usually administer, these drugs such as, Ritalin and, the others. I'm not going to say much, but they do end up diagnosing on that. And sometimes I believe this can be a bit detrimental towards their development as a child.
Yeah, I think it can. I think it can be detrimental. I just think it's easier, right? If you're going to have a whole class full of kids and some kids really hyperactive and distracting the other kids, I think sedate them a little bit, and so the rest of the kids can just get on with their day.
I can understand the impatience and anger pertaining to that position. You send your child to school, you want them to learn the best and to do their best so they can be successful. Yet at the same time, it's also important for children to learn self-focus in class and to know what their path is. You're learning this for your future and whatnot. And at the same time you should learn self-control,
So
while at
good.
the same
Let's
time
just pause
on
there,
the other.
Moon Pie. You did really
Yes.
well at the start there, and then you said yet, which is a very similar word to but. What you did a really
Yes, right? I see.
what
I
you
don't
did a
want to
really
be
good
rude, so I
job
just say
of.
yes. I can see that point.
Yeah, so what you did a really good job of is not just saying, yes, I can see your point, because often we hear people say, yeah, I can see your point. And I think most of us, certainly I have the thought, can you though? Do you really?
I did
And-
agree,
Yeah,
actually.
and so you followed on. What I think you did really well was you
Hmm.
followed on. You said you send your child to school and you want them to learn and be their best. I think you said, or something really where I was like, yeah, you do agree, because you added on to what I was saying. It's just you said yet we want them to learn to regulate. Could it be that the two ideas aren't an either or proposition? It's not we want them to learn their best and yet we want them to regulate their behavior. Is it we want them to learn their best and they do that through regulating their behavior? Do you see the difference?
So what you're stating is you want them to learn through regulation, or
I'm sorry.
non-regu-
I'm to pull back from the content of the discussion to talk about how to have the discussion. The goal here is to go, actually, could you? My view, what I presented was like, yeah, but what about how the kids learn? Your job is to go, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So you agree with my point, because it sounds like you do agree with my point, right?
Yes, I.
Exactly.
Yes.
So align them, yeah. Rather than go this one yet that one, go this one and that one. They're both together. In fact, we do one through the other.
Okay, so like yes, so.
I'll start
Okay,
with my
so-
objection again so you can practice. So my
Yes, sir.
objection was it's just really difficult when you're running a school and you've got one kid who's freaking out and disrupting other kids. It's just easier to sedate that kid.
Okay. Okay, so you would like me to refer, you don't want me to say yet because that refers to like a negative opposing towards your statement, yes?
Yeah, yeah.
Just okay. So let me continue with what I was saying.
Sure.
So yes, I agree with that point, and I understand with the regulation of a child.
Mhm.
Could I say, however, would however also still have like a negative?
However would be the same. Do you think we
Okay.
could help that in order for the children to learn, learning to regulate that behavior is a part of that process, so that
Well-
they will go to school and learn best by managing these impulses they have?
Yes, because it's reflectory towards life, and I think also with the workplace in modern day society, when you're working with your coworkers, and sometimes some may not be as agreeable, the agreeability scale, and in a way we have to learn to deal with that and to use our best skills and to develop characteristics of our own in order to handle, let's say, someone a little more chatty, someone a little more quiet, someone a little more boisterous. I think it's a vibrant environment that allows for success in multiple parts of the workplace, if that's all right.
Yeah, excellent.
was that?
Really well said. Exactly. Very nice.
Okay.
Very nicely said. Carry on.
Oh, to carry on. Oh, yay. So to carry on with this, I also understand that I think parents could also feel very upset about this. Yet I think it. Oh no.
That's okay. If it's
Oh.
your ideas, you're weighing, you go, this idea, yet that idea is also, and they weigh against one another, that's okay. It's more to go, you're talking to me and you go, yeah, Harry, your idea, yet my idea. That's the kind
okay.
of yet or but or however that we want to look to weed out. Keep going.
I see. So I was continuing on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet I also believe that parents should have a right to, understand their children and to allow them to grow up from their, stages of development. And I would like to state that it would be quite unfair to just sedate a child without giving them the chance to develop, as most of humanity is imperfect. I think all of humanity, we could argue, is somewhat imperfect, such as, how I'm speaking with right now. And I think there's a chance that a child can develop and children around them can learn to develop and be compassionate and, create a nice community and a good learning environment where we can learn to understand children, first of all, before administering sedative, drugs in therapeutic cases.
Excellent. Okay, great. So now, from the Peanut Gallery, what do we think? How did that sound? Ryan, Magnus, if you're around. Did you for Moon Pie? Did you get that sense? Did you get what I was talking about with the yet bit? How it works in conversation and how difficult it is to stop ourselves from speaking in that way?
Yeah, I didn't notice it at first because most of the time when I'm debating other people about you can also use cognitive behavioral therapy or you can also use dialectical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I use sometimes I end up getting a little bit, feisty about it, and I'm trying to say I feel like this word also causes people to be very on the aggressive route, so I'm really trying to be calm about it.
Yeah.
Let them feel a bit welcomed.
And do you feel the aggressive route is still effective?
Most of the time I try not to. I really don't like them to be upset, and I would like to be a bit more assertive with that. Most people do tell me, Moon, you're quite a little bit soft on it. I'm not sure what you're trying to say, so I really would like to develop that.
Yeah, I think and I think it's important to make that clear. This is a tool. It's just about how can we be. You were talking about that personality, Big Five personality trait of agreeableness. It's a really
yes.
absolutely linked to this. How can we keep a conversation going with somebody who's quite agreeable, who might, particularly if they rate also highly in perhaps neuroticism, if we just flat out disagree with them and go, no, you're wrong, anxiety goes up, and the conversation might go out the window. I'm not though saying only agree with people. I think that's weak sauce. I don't think it works. So I think it's still okay to let yourself have those moments where you get really passionate, if for nothing else, so you can recognize the steps that lead there. So you can get to this is how I often use it, to get to a certain point and go, oh, wow, I'm getting quite angry. And then to bring myself back down to go, okay, pick the bits of the other person's argument I really agree with and focus on them there deliberately for a bit. So you can then, so I'm not saying do this all the time. I certainly think if you've recognized for yourself that being more assertive and speaking up at some times could be of benefit to you or other people around you, absolutely lean into that too.
I see. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Any last thoughts for us, Moon Pie?
No, I'm sorry. I'm quite confused from what you stated before. I didn't quite get what you were saying towards the end.
Sure.
On my part, it kind of.
Yeah, sure. I'll say it again. What this workshop is how to argue by agreeing. And the idea of we just agreeing with people can be a really effective way to, as you say, have a calm, rational, reasonable conversation. What I was just saying is, I'm not saying just do it this way. I'm saying this is a useful tool. But if you've identified for yourself that you would like to practice being more assertive as well, then absolutely have at that too. I'm not making a value judgment between the two. I think the more different ways we can be, the more effective you can be.
I also had another question for you, if that's quite all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Which other words for you worked better when you're saying, you're agreeing quite nicely? Because for me, what I noticed is that when yet causes, a little bit of emotions to flare for others. Which other ones worked well for you?
Which other ones worked well for me? The way you first characterized what I was saying about we want our children to go to school and learn, I thought was great, because I was making what was deliberately callous, this sort of like, I'll stuff it argument. And you were weeding through a fairly clumsy, I'll stuff it, just let the kids learn argument to go, I agree that it's really important that they get a good education. I think that was a really powerful thing, because it took my argument that I was throwing at you and made it better, which is such an affirming feeling, so likely to cause assonance in me. So that was the first thing I noticed you did really well. When working, and then I think the way you flowed from my argument, once we had that discussion about, hang on, can both points of view be true, when you then led on to talking about, well, people in the workplace, you're going to have to deal with somebody who's too chatty or too energetic or something like that. I think that's a really useful way to point out the so what of the conversation. And the so what of the conversation is, we go from having this ethical, largely philosophical debate about drugging children, which, not philosophical, but could be stuck in science and stuff, to get to the nuts and bolts of here's the so what, here's what really matters, here's the impact it's going to have at the end of the day. And that's your ability to regulate and influence and exist within a diverse workplace. I think that is also a really nice, powerful argument that wasn't feeling like it was, oh, but this argument beats your argument. It was like, yeah, I agree with you, and this.
I also have another question. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go for it. One more question while I look for the next person.
The last one.
Sure.
So if you have data to support your statement, are you allowed, how would you link that in if you're going towards, you agree, however you have data that may oppose what they're actually stating?
So
let's say you're presenting like to a board or something.
yeah, absolutely. So a few different things. One is it depends who you're presenting to. Indeed, as you said, if you're presenting to a board, I quite often find that people more senior within organizations, if you're talking in the business sphere, are quite often alpha type personalities. They're quite often quite direct. They quite often like good data. So I will generally go, if that person really bluntly argues with me, I will use that as an assumption to go, they probably like blunt argument. So I might because this is just about efficacy. It's not about right or wrong. It's just about what works well. So if I spot that habit in somebody else, I'm much more likely if they say something factually wrong to go, nah, you're just flat wrong about that. Whereas if I get the sense that they might become defensive about that, if it feels more like an argument rather than we're discussing facts, I will sometimes swing it around a different way, which is like we did in the previous discussion, where I don't say I've got evidence to the contrary. I will say, if I was able to show you evidence to the contrary, would that shift your position? And that does two things. One, they have to shift their position quite often. They have to go, I guess it isn't just based on that one thing that I said. Or they go, yeah, I would, without yet knowing if there's evidence there. So the dissonance isn't up. They're just going, yeah, of course, I would change my position because I'm a reasonable person. That will give me assonance rather than dissonance. And then I swing back around to going, well, there's this. And I try not to shove it in their face, but to go, hey, particularly if you can physically be in a room with somebody, you put it on the table in front of them, you sit side by side them and you go, let's both look at this data and see what we think it says, rather than I have my data and it says you're wrong. Because anything that makes somebody feel dumb or wrong, they're going to want to reject.
Yes, they get upset. Okay. I see. So you use also friendly energy when you're getting close to someone as well. Like you make them feel welcomed.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Got it bang on.
All right. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good discussion. Thanks, Moonby. Who's up next?
I'd like to try one.
Go for it, Jay. Okay, you can go. And then I think we've got Joy-Con Boys is going to be stepping up. Jay, what's your position?
Joy-Con Boys. Oh, this must be a Switch player. I fucks with that. Okay.
So, orange.
So, let's see here.
Pick a real extreme. If you haven't picked your position yet, go like as extreme as you can, and we can preface it by saying this doesn't have to be the actual position you hold. Let's see how extreme a position you can argue for if you just want to play with the tools.
Okay, so let's go with. Damn, I was gonna do. I believe that water is wet discussion. I wanted to do that one.
So why don't we pick something like really counterintuitive or silly? What's a position that other people hold that you find ridiculous that you could argue for?
That's a good one.
Flat Earth, the existence or non-existence of God. Go for it, Jay.
Vaccines give you autism. I'm so glad you gave me a hint.
Awesome.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, so vaccines give you autism is Jay's position. We're saying that Jay doesn't agree with this, right? So I just better put a little asterisk on one of these so nobody sees this whole thing and goes, Jay's really saying that. Is that right? You don't agree with this position. You think it's silly.
I can't find myself to argue for that, so I don't agree with it. No.
Okay, good. So yeah, you can. Your job is to argue for this position. I put a little asterisk there so we know that it's not your real thoughts. Our job is to argue against you. Go for it. Give your first case. Remembering we're not bound by these yes and rules. You're bound by the yes and rules. We can be as rude and obstructive as possible.
So, all right. So multiple studies have shown that vaccines can be reliable, but they also put young children at risk of getting autism or some sort of mental disorder.
That's just bullshit. That is utter bullshit.
Why do you say?
Oh, nicely done. Because there's the original study that was found in has been repeatedly debunked.
What about wait, time out. Can we use like fake studies?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So the Pew.
Hang on, though. Pause though. You said what about? So you've got to somehow agree with what I'm saying. You've got to make me feel assonance, not dissonance.
Okay. So yeah, even though that it was debunked on a multiplicity of occasions. We don't know. We're not entirely sure of the credibility of the sources that may have debunked these studies, right?
True, yeah.
So,
but we do know that there are
how does it
far more studies that show that there doesn't appear to be a relationship, and there's good reason of the studies we do know that showed a relationship that it was poorly controlled, tiny sample size, just sort of bad science.
So, sure. How about if the CDC were to confirm that this is actually true, then where would we go with our where would we go with our vaccinations? Why would we continue to legislate them as if they're important when they're actually harmful to our children?
So as a pause here, that was a really nice way to do it. As a hypothetical, how about if it came out it was true, is a very interesting way to argue. Yep, carry on. Well, then obviously if the CDC said it, they'd have good reason to say it, and then we would have concern. It's just that's not the case at the moment.
Sure. I'm arguing, though, that multiple sources have shown that it actually does, some of which haven't even been looked at by these quote-unquote debunkers. So how are we certain that this isn't true?
We're certain it isn't true because, well, we're not certain it isn't true. I guess that's the place to say it. That's where I would, if I'm going to start playing the game too, rather than just being rude to you. I would say you're right. It's impossible to tell for sure that vaccines don't cause autism, just as the same it would be impossible to tell if vaccines caused infertility in 1 in 6 million people or something like that. So I think you're right to have a concern that vaccines might cause some problems. I think of the specific claim of vaccines cause autism, that is a more specific one we can test and have tested, and we keep finding that there doesn't appear to be a relationship. But what I would agree with you on, it's impossible to prove a negative. It's impossible for us to prove X doesn't cause Y. All we can do is look and go, I don't see a relationship yet.
So is this the part where we reach deadlock, or do I need to continue?
We can pause.
I'm losing ground. Yeah.
That's okay. What's it like arguing a position you disagree with?
It's cringe. That's what it's like. It's the most cringiest thing I've ever done. But it's useful. I actually see why it's relevant to be able to understand. It was actually hard trying to go about not using a but or however in an argument. Almost feels impossible. But yeah.
I mean, I gotta be straight with you. I was an actor for a chunk of years, so I've learnt to read lines and stuff. I then have written a book on talking, and I deliver this as a workshop for corporates, and I still use the word but all the time. I do agree with you. I think it's nigh on impossible to cut it out altogether with arguing. When arguing with people, I guess the position I have on it is almost in proportion to how difficult it is that valuable. So that's why I work on it. I think it was a good discussion to have. It's an interesting one. Did you feel, this is a kind of loaded way to ask a question, did you feel you might have a insight into the way anti-vaxxers think by presenting their arguments?
Yeah, I kind of see where they might formulate their argument. They might, come across the idea like, oh, this is true because of one measly source, like momsagainstvaccines.org or some shit like that. But
yeah,
I can totally understand, yeah, where they would formulate their arguments from, solely based on articles that aren't scientifically based or don't have any background behind it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't think many people think that they are holding a position that don't have any background to it. I think that, it's just quite often they end up with self-reinforcing beliefs, which is like the lack of
Right.
evidence is proof of the conspiracy. So that I don't have any evidence that shows vaccines cause autism is proof that this is true. It's just proof that the medical establishment are all in cahoots with one another and are trying to make us sicker by treating us for disease. You know, that kind of a mentality. I think anyway. I don't want to speak for other people.
Right. And I was I think I got a little bit more of a broader perspective when it comes to, you know, arguing in favor of those that I would usually argue against, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So next we've got, if I look in the queue of people with their hands up, Joy-Con wants to argue about, let me go back to find it again. The idea of ethical purchasing or sort of ethical consumerism, I think it might be sometimes called. So how do we get him up to the stage? I've got to bloody invite him. Press the button. He's dropped out of there. So we've got Toys R Us, Pitiful, Audience Remote, Sea Salt Ice Cream, Brunt. There we go. We've got Joy-Con boys in. So for those who are waiting with their hand up, make sure you dip into Ask to Join and post in Ask to Join what your position is. For those just joining us, and I'll give this intro again for Joy-Con boys right before he leads off, is we're running a session. I'm also streaming this on Twitch and YouTube. We're running a session called Argue by Agreeing. And the idea is you present a position that you deeply agree with, or in the case of Jay, who just went, that he didn't agree with, but wanted to have a crack at arguing anyway, to practice arguing by agreeing with the other person. So to use the construction of yes and, to go, maybe both of our ideas are right, or maybe your idea is completely valid and that's why this thing I'm arguing for is so important, or here's what I can agree with in what you're saying. So to use that general gist, because what we're trying to do when we argue with people is change their mind, but we typically do it by evoking a lot of dissonance. And that is a feeling we get of like, I don't like how that thought makes me feel. And it can make us reject arguments or shout back or compulsively disagree and rejoin the conversation with, no, what I was trying, no, but, and sort of stops people from listening. So the practice of this is not so much the content of what we're discussing, but more practicing this style. So Joy-Con boys, your position was about ethical consumerism, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Okay. So basically my position is that I think it is morally ethical to make a purchase from a company or person that owns a company. I don't know, however you do it. That, like, let's say they've done something that people consider to be like wrong. I feel like that shouldn't stop you from being able to buy whatever item they sell.
Okay. So I find some people who went and murdered babies, but they make some really cool shoes called Murder Babies, and it's okay for me to buy their shoes because they're fly.
Exactly.
Right.
I believe the consumer would be, I think they would be defined by the items they purchase, not who they purchase it from. So I think as long as the item is not representing whatever bad thing they did, like it's not, shoes with like pictures of dead babies on it. So I feel like it would be okay to buy it.
So as long as the product itself wasn't representing that bad thing, then it's okay. That's what you're saying, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay, so what about in the case of if we take Nestle, who all of Reddit seems to love to hate, because the CEO said something about selling water or something like that, and we were to say, sure, the product itself, I just find their chocolates nommy, yet. So that would fit that sort of litmus test you have of as long as the product itself isn't representing, tapping groundwater and digging wells so deep that locals end up having to buy their bottled water. And I'm not supporting that directly, but when I eat a chocolate bar, that's okay. The argument I would have against that is, could that be feeding money into a machine that does deeply unethical things? Could I be facilitating that evil?
Yes, you could argue that. Okay, I gotta figure out how to not say but here.
Yeah, good. You can have a think. Pausing is fine.
Okay, yeah, you got me. I don't know how to respond to that without saying but. I feel like I'm very objective, so it would be hard for me to respond to that.
So go say what you would say with the but, and let's workshop it into something with an and.
Yeah, that is true, but I'm sorry, I just lost what I was about to say.
It's okay.
Okay, that is true, but I don't think you would still be directly supporting that cause, because I don't think buying chocolate milk is the same as supporting someone that is trying to sell water. I think if you were buying the water that they were selling, or whatever point you brought up was, then that would be directly supporting them. But I don't think, because it's different, it's not necessarily the same thing. I know what you're saying, that like you're still supporting a person even though the idea is different, and that could lead to them being able to produce that. But I think once they move on to that, you can stop supporting it then. Because I don't think it would be my responsibility. I think that would be theirs. So I think that if they were to go that route, then I would make the choice to stop supporting them, because I don't support that specifically.
Okay. So what we would do then to turn that into a but, so it sounded like you said the first part of it I wrote down, that is true, but you wouldn't be directly supporting that. So what you could do to switch that is go, yes, absolutely, there is a chance that by sending them my money, I am indirectly supporting it. And it is that, because it's indirect, that I'm focusing on. I think that in the cases, if it was more direct, then absolutely we need to think about ethical consumerism. In the case of it being so indirect, I'm not. Do you see what I mean? Where I'm kind of sideswiping around to go, it is, that one is a bit of a more elusive answer to say that. To go, the point you're making is absolutely right. The point I'm making is the same, which is we're talking about indirect support rather than direct support, like, buying the water itself.
So just like explain the nuance.
Explain how they both could be true. Yeah. So let's keep going with it, because this is a position I find quite interesting, and I question myself on a bit. I quite often upgrade my mobile phone, and I feel somewhat guilty about that, particularly after I've watched a few documentaries to find out where conflict minerals come from. And our phones quite often have a lot of, what do I say, the 3 Ts. I think it's tin, tantalum, and tungsten, or something, most of which is dug up by, I think at least the tantalum, one of them. Almost 80% of the supply comes from the Congo, where almost all of it is dug up by children who are, have guns pointed at them. They've been kidnapped from their homes, and they like getting kids to do it because apparently the deposits are found. The kids' fingers are in some way better for doing it, better for digging it up. It's sort of large open cut mining doesn't work as well as slave children. And that makes me feel really uncomfortable. And I'm not directly going and pointing guns at kids. What I worry I am doing is supporting a company that does that. So I deliberately then go and look for companies that have sort of ethical supply chain agreements, ones that I trust, so that I can then still get a good phone that's great, that does all of the work I need it to for my business. It just also doesn't support kids, with bleeding fingers and guns pointed at them. Thoughts, Joy-Con?
Okay, I agree with that completely, actually. That's true. I'm trying not to say but again. I think that would be okay, as long as, like, you could find a company that is more, that serves your ethical standards better, as long as you don't, like, let's say you find someone else that is buying from that company, you don't try to, what's the word for it? Like you don't put them down for buying from that company just because you know that it's unethical and you choose to take the high road and do this company. I still think that person is within their right to purchase whatever phone. Because I mean, you can argue that most, if not all, companies have some sort of unethical way to produce whatever their product is. So I think that
Sure.
I don't think that necessarily means it's right, but I mean, you have a point.
So I think it's an interesting point. It sounds like it may be, and do correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't want to describe your position here. It sounds like it might have changed from it's morally ethical to make the choice to keep buying from a company that does something that people consider to be wrong, to it's more about don't judge or attack people who do buy from a company that you consider to be ethically wrong. Is that the case? Because I think I agree with your last proposition, which is like, yeah, if I were to summarize it in my words, I'd say, yeah, you be mindful, you do your ethical consumption, but don't go be a prick to somebody else because they don't hold your standard of morals and don't dig through the fine details of every last product they purchase.
I would say I agree with both things. I think I still hold my first point, but I agree with the second one. Because I still don't think I would be directly responsible for those kids. Because I mean, if a company is going to do that, they're probably going to find a way. They're going to find any way to cut corners. So I don't. But then again, you could still say that doesn't mean that it's right. So I think it could really go both ways. I guess I'd have to work on a better argument for that.
Yeah, because I agree. I think they will. There's a good chance that all companies will cut corners. I think all humans. I think let's go away from company. We all do, don't we? We cut corners, like we speed exactly. Where we think there's a low probability of getting caught, right? The reason I've started to shift on it is because I go, well, that is them getting caught. I would like to do it through regulation. I think that would be a better way to do it, where they're all set to a bar of ethical, supply chain agreements or something like that. Short of that, in the short immediate term, I will just try to dissuade them with profitability, with it being less profitable to be less ethical.
Yeah,
excellent.
I agree.
Great, good discussion. I think that was. Any last thoughts? It's sort of about the discussion or about this style of having discussions.
Well, I mean, like I said before, I believe I'm probably more objective with my arguments. So usually, I've been in very few, but in the debates I have been in, it usually ends up in the other party getting heated. So I'm trying to figure out how to avoid that. And I saw this, and I thought it'd be cool to join.
Yeah, it's great fun. I would encourage you to practice. And Discord's such a cool place to do it. This is why I should also plug again the server. For anybody who's listening here, do join in on this server, Chatterbox, because it's really cool. People quite often do have really nice discussions and debates. I won't promise you they're always going to be using these tools. For that purpose you're talking about, though, Joy-Con, it can be really useful to go into a conversation where people aren't bound by these rules, so they might just insult you or call you names or something like that, because I find in those instances I can be like, oh, I'm going to get some practice here. These people are kind of giving me a free learning opportunity to go, how can I manage my dissonance so I stay even, calm, and think of reasonable, agreeable statements that I can present in the toughest environment imaginable. So if anybody's here, part of that plug was do make sure you join the Chatbox server with them, and then you'll know if more of these are coming up again.
All right, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joy-Con. Let me take a look at who else has got their hand up. Any thoughts, Magnus or Ryan?
About this, I had an idea for a point that might be nice, because like, if you're trying to find, because if he doesn't feel like he's perfectly responsible, maybe ask like if there would be a limit, like is there something that would make you decide not to buy something from an ethical standpoint, or is there no limit to like what happened before that product got into your hands?
That's a really good. I've just shuffled Joy-Con back out. Joy-Con, if you want to stick up your hand, you're welcome to come back for that. That's a super good question that I totally breezed past an opportunity to ask anything like that. That's a kind of street epistemology question, isn't it, a bit, Magnus?
Yeah, kind of. It's just like to maybe some people have not defined the scale because maybe they're just thinking about one certain thing, like because maybe they've seen like a factory or something, and maybe that didn't do it for them. But then maybe if there's a limit, it just starts maybe to get them onto the other side to think like, what would make me stop doing these things? And then when they start thinking about that, it might actually facilitate change later on, because it might make them think about, yeah, but then, well, like it's making their life miserable and stuff like that, you know. So
yeah, absolutely. And this is a really good question, because the goal of this, why I'm so interested in learning this, is because I have a sort of abiding belief that the more strongly we hold ideas, the more likely we are to do unpleasant things to support them. And so I'm an advocate for doubt. I'm an advocate for being like, I think this is the case, but let's stay open to new evidence and let's hold our ideas lightly. And what that is there a limit question is great, is encouraging people to moderate their own views without going, well, there's got to be a limit, is a much better way of going, well, would there be a limit? Is there a point you would get to where you go, yeah, even that one's a bit too much for me. So, and this is the thing that I think you so often find with that, which is why I'm so glad you posed that as a question, is you so often find our points aren't as opposed as we thought. Like the immigration debates sound like, if you listen to the surface, it is anybody should be able to walk into current country we're discussing. Anybody should be able to cross over from Indonesia to Australia in boats whenever they want, open the doors. And the other side sounds like, no, shut the doors, lock it down, keep them out. And that is invariably not the position that either side hold. The position that either side hold is quite often nuanced. And if you ask them, they quite often don't end up with a number. They quite often don't end up, they just sort of go, well, I get the feeling it's too high, or I get the feeling that it's too low. And then you go, well, what number is it currently and where should it be? You quite often find that there's like, now exactly as you said, Magnus, now we can get into the nuance. So I wanted to bring Magnus back. What are your thoughts on that? And would there be a limit for you? Or you can ask the question, sorry, Magnus.
yeah, so Turkon, if I understood you right, it was that you don't feel directly responsible for like neglecting of people in the supply chain of the products that you use in your daily life.
No, I don't.
Okay. So is there a limit, like if you were to find like, yeah, would there be a limit to like suffering in the supply chain that would make you not want to buy a product, or would you always like this vocabulary is playing with me?
I think I understand what you're saying. I would say that if the product, like I said before, if the product represents whatever bad thing that was happening, or if it somehow like directly contributes or causes the bad thing to happen. Like I don't, like you could say in response to that, oh, you're buying it, so that does cause whatever to happen. But I think that like in the case of like, I don't know, the children, let's say they make shoes and I'm buying the shoes and I'm wearing them. I don't think wearing those shoes is directly causes those children to be in bad work environments. I feel like I don't think it's the children's choice. I don't think, because if it's not one thing, then it's the other, right? I think you cannot, I don't think it's something that can be necessarily avoided. So if, which does not make it right, obviously, but if the kids are making the shoes and you stop buying that, the company's going to find something else to make. And I don't think that,
would there be a limit?
That should stop you.
What about if we phrase the question a different way and we said, it's still going to be indirect, it's still going to be an indirect cause, but the cost was far higher. So the cost of one shoe was 4 dead kids, and you knew that, and you go, it's still indirect, but the sky high rates, and this is obviously an absolutely ridiculous statement, I'm not suggesting it's the case. Would there be a barrier we'd get to where it's still indirect, but the cost is very high, and that would change your view on it?
Because of that statement, this is going to make me sound terrible, but no, I don't think so. Because I don't think I don't think that is necessarily going to happen. Like, I don't think me buying a pair of shoes is going to cause 4 children to die. Because that's not really indirect. That sounds very direct. I feel like if me buying a pair of shoes for someone, boom, 4 kids dead, I feel like that's more of a direct cause and effect there.
Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. So let's thank you again for rejoining us as well, Joy-Con. Excellent. All right. Thanks for that. We'll move on now to Block. Is that how I pronounce it? Block.
Yep, that's it.
Block. Okay.
Just block, but misspelled because I have dyslexia. Woo.
So what's that like? What would you like to talk to us about, Block?
I'd like to kind of go back to that original talk you were having about the intellectual property and how people own them, because I thought that was interesting and it didn't get to drive home a lot.
So excellent. Okay. So what's your position on it? What would you like to argue for? Noting now, I may or may not switch sides to make it tougher for you.
All right. Yeah, my idea is, as I'm somebody who's about to go into a field where I'm going to be producing intellectual property for people's consumption, is that it needs to, because of the way that the digital world is, with it being relatively extremely easy to pirate media than beforehand, before the internet and before digital world. You can copy a file, you can record a movie on your phone, right? Stuff like that. So the income for us creators is very hard to come by without a little bit of security from copyright law, for example.
Okay, so it's about the income for these creators. Let's start on the position of, and what I'm going to do now to open it up a bit is, anybody who's here on this panel can be the Peanut Gallery and disagree not using the rules. You can also try now to join in using the rules. So we can all get some practice at it now. So that's, slightly changing the nature of how we're going to run it, but you're still bound by the rules, Block. So you'll still have to use yes and we'll pull you up if you say but or disagree with me or cause me or anybody on the Peanut Gallery to feel dissonance. Can we get a clear idea of your position on this?
All right. I believe that copyright law, the way it is better than if we were to remove them in large, as you were saying earlier towards the beginning of the stream.
Sure. Sorry, I was being very rude just a second and I forgot. I didn't hear your wording exactly. Say it again exactly. Sorry for this. That's very rude of me.
I believe that having copyright law the way we have it now is better than removing it by and large in order to make media more accessible to everybody, because it allows creators to actually get compensation for the work that they do on the internet.
Because it allows them to get compensation, right? Okay, excellent. So now I'm going to try and stay sticking in the rules because I find it really hard when I'm on a topic like this that I care really deeply about.
We just have to care too.
Excellent. Okay, so I agree first of all that it's important that we're mindful of the creativity of people. As I just mentioned a moment ago, I've written a book and I get very little bit of money anytime anybody buys that book. So I agree with you that we need to be thinking about the income of creators. And it is much easier to pirate media now. In fact, it's the ease in which we can pirate media that somewhat informs my side of the discussion, I think, or sort of informs, I said that the wrong way, influences my side of the discussion, because I think that back when pirating media involved sort of coming up with an illegal record press with a plate for that record, and you would copy it illegally. That was a sort of dodgy mafia operation that was directly stealing from the record company, who'd put a lot of effort and money into producing that. I think now because it's so easy to pirate media, that's some of why I go, yeah, maybe it should. Not altogether, not like you've got no IP the moment you made that song, that's all of our song now. Just there's a limit, it's 5 or 10 years, maybe 15 we could start off with, at which point it then crosses into the realm where anybody can use it because it's so easy.
As somebody who uses a lot of this content for my own projects, people's songs and stuff, I think I agree that a grace period is actually not a bad thing, and I think that already exists in a lot of ways. I think the amount of years is a lot longer than 15 right now, if I'm not mistaken. For a lot of types of media, it's like 70 or 75 years before it goes onto the public domain.
Yes,
which
absolutely,
can be
absolutely.
pretty excessive, sure.
Yeah, just to chip in there,
Um,
what I've heard of it is I've heard someone say no media has crossed into the public domain since Disney started fighting it. So it's 75 years. I think stuff has started crossing in, but the number has been climbing quicker than we've been advancing through years. So yeah, carry on.
Right. Yeah. And it's nice to be able to have access to things like all the American classics for free, right? That's important because that's how I can keep myself educated using the media that's out there. And access is really important because as creators, you and I want people to access our stuff, whether or not they can afford it. Now, I think the fact that we're creators means that we want to do these things as much as we can. I know that I personally am going to make sure my media is going to be as accessible as I can make it to my audience because that's my end game goal, is that I want them to view what I produce. I can't do that without funding, and the funding can come from a side job, but for plenty of us creators, if you've ever tried that, it can become extremely stressful and burn out people like me really fast.
Yeah.
Things
What
like
about
copyright
then
law-
to
yeah.
test it? What about if I propose to you that the current system is why you've got that shitty system? The current system isn't. They keep saying this is protecting artists, and I agree with you. Let's protect artists. I would say that is utter shit, though, that is being fed to us by giant companies. Now, I've got to be mindful. Some of these companies are my clients, so I don't want to insult them too much, but I do think there is something not quite predatory, but sort of lazy and profiteering when this giant organization goes, no, we own that, we own the intellectual property, and it is thousands and thousands of people who aren't actually the artists themselves. And what the artists value is, sure, they want to get their money, but what kind of, let me, so I can put some context in the conversation. Oh, I just used the word but. Then I stopped. What kind of stuff do you produce? Or will you be soon producing? Sorry, is the way you put it.
I'll be producing short films and music as well as YouTube content on my own time.
Sure. So if I propose to you that one of your short films goes absolutely gangbusters, like you put it up on a YouTube channel or somewhere, Vimeo, something like that, and people go, wow, this is fire. And as a result, millions of people around the world are filming it on their phones and re-uploading it to their TikTok. They're ripping it down and recutting it and re-uploading it. Somebody's turned this bit of dialogue in it that was particularly pithy and funny into a dance track. And as a result, millions upon millions of people see your video. And then I propose to you on the other side of that, the current system where you do that, you hand that license over to a company that then gives you a small pittance of what you would earn. And anytime anybody tries to cut it or edit it or upload it to their TikTok, that company hunts them down and fucks up their life. And as a result, 10,000 people see your video. Which is the one you would prefer? Getting no money from millions and millions of people seeing your video and you quite probably becoming famous, or you getting circa $100 for 10,000 people seeing it?
Personally, I would go with option one, and that's because I don't want to fall into the Disney trap, and that's what it tends to be called by a lot of people. I think you made good points involving corporations being very predatory, using these policies in order to just gain lots more influence and money through us creators. I don't think I would want to work in the interest of all those companies necessarily. If I were to put in policies, they would be to secure the intellectual property of the individual as a priority, because we've seen what Disney does to people. There's been documentaries and everything.
Crush creators.
Yeah.
And they're protecting their
Yeah, for
assets.
sure.
I think it's reasonable that they protect their assets. It's
Yes.
just we're in a system where it calls some dead guy's drawings the assets of a company. And I think if it's you for your video and you made it and somebody else, which I've had happen, rips it and uploads it and goes, this is my video, I'm now getting ad rev. I think that's a situation where probably both of us would agree. And I think most reasonable people would agree, hey, that's a bit shifty.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, what we're talking about is like, I think what you're worried about, which is quite reasonable, is if we got rid of them altogether, is there a chance that the creative arts would just stop, would grind to a halt, and nobody would be doing anything anymore?
Either nobody would be doing anything, or the people who are doing things are working to no avail, and we find that they go broke and they fall out of relevance really quickly. And that's what I'm afraid of in the long run, is that we can't sustain ourselves to keep doing what we want to do by showing our content to everybody else.
Yeah. And I certainly think there's a trap for that. And they're like, hey, that you'll almost undoubtedly find when you get into the market is, hey, can you do this for free? Oh, come on, I'll give you exposure and stuff. That's the insidious end that I think really hurts artists. And that is people going, oh, come on, it'll be good for you. It'll be good for your thing. And they don't really value your art. I think the point you raised, though, is important, which is if we got rid of it altogether without doing some sort of evidence-based trials and tests and sort of see how it goes, there's a chance it could destroy creativity. And that's something, if that wasn't the case, if we could see examples where that wasn't the case, do you think that would shift your position at all? If we went actually in some markets where this isn't protected, artists do really well?
Perhaps it could. I think one of the weirdest problems philosophically as an artist is that no matter how you look at it philosophically, I think most people will be able to agree that you can't put an intrinsic value on art in terms of a dollar, right? You can't, because it's not material. Like the art itself, like you're not paying for the paint, you're paying for the idea of how the paint is arranged on that canvas. And that's entirely arbitrary. So sometimes we have, paintings go for $20. Like the original Mona Lisa is worth way more than any copies of the Mona Lisa, for example, stuff like that. So how do we get any protection, or I guess job security is the word I'm looking for here. How do we get job security as artists when what we produced has no intrinsic value?
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. All right. I think that's a good conversation. Thoughts from other panel members, Brunt and Magnus?
Magnus is deafened.
Oh, right. He ain't here.
Yeah. I have been practicing this method.
You have been?
Yeah, besides here, because I think I've done it even before I learned you exist, because I usually argue more philosophically about things.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody with really staunch beliefs about what the universe even is for, right? The very existentials of everything, you're not going to make them budge. So I found it not to argue for persuasion, but to argue for perspective. And this is like street epistemology was a great starting point, and I think this will help actually take the next step in that process. It's like step 2.
Yeah, excellent. And another resource I find really useful, I found this thing a while ago called Clean Language. Super useful resource. If you get into it a bit, if anybody's reading about clean language, super useful tool. It can get really hippy-dippy because they talk about metaphor and stuff. I would somewhat ignore their use case for it. Not ignore it altogether, but they talk about it as a sort of therapeutic tool for dealing with people's metaphors, which gets to me a little bit woo. Whereas what it is at its heart is like, how could you ask a question of somebody that doesn't influence or pollute the conversation, and you ask these questions in a way that sounds a bit weird when you first start practicing it, but one with a bit of practice can become really conversational that can help open up those discussions. So I often will go like, what do you mean by when you say da-da-da, which is a common one used in debates, but then you can go like, what kind of, or can you give an example, or in what way is X like Y, or does X cause Y? And I find it can be much easier going, well, X doesn't cause Y. What's your proof?
And one of the things I've observed that I'm sure you've also observed in coming up with this theory that you're presenting to all of us, is that almost 100% of the time, even someone who's on the far polar opposite of your belief system will have something in common with how you look at the world.
Yes.
That's always a good anchor point, because that's the only one where you can get on their level and vice versa, and actually have a conversation that goes anywhere. Because
Absolutely.
I know, you know,
And it's so interesting that you so often find exactly that yeah, they disagree and you share the same reasons. You assume, I quite often will assume like some negative intent, or they're just being selfish, or they're dumb, or there's something like that. And then you go, oh no, not only do you hold the opposite view, but you often hold it for the same reasons, that we want to protect the, you know, protect the vulnerable or something. You're like, oh, okay, actually that's quite a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. And the statistics mean nothing unless you know what you intend to do with your argument and what your argument is. Like, the statistics are just numbers that you use when you've already come to that spot. So this is why I consider this like the step 2 in the argument. Step 3 would be to, once you both recognize that you have the same general belief system about anything, and then you've also figured out what each other believes, then you can actually bring up some, like, you know, bring the statistics, and that's when you can start to have a debate with the word but.
Yeah.
Because now you've got the rapport.
Yeah, that's a crucial bit. Like, right, we don't want to, if we think somebody's a right prick or an idiot, we don't want to agree with them. We don't want to align our views with that person because they're a knob, right? Whereas if we built that rapport and we go, if we built that rapport and we go, hey, you're a clever chap and you're really interesting, you're quite funny, we will go, upon these more foundational things, I will be more willing to bend, not change, somewhat change my views, but to bring them more into alignment with yours. Whereas if all we're disagreeing on is abortion, and you're a sort of zealot and you're a baby killer and this kind of stuff, is like, where do we go from there? Where is that going to get us? And that's so often why when you watch debates, you see that both sides' teams always claim victory. So two people go into a debate, which is to try to decide in some sort of close to proper competition, whose idea is right, and then both sides walk away dusting themselves off going, awesome, nailed it. And it's like, well, obviously not.
You know, yeah, we owned them.
Yeah,
no. Yeah,
excellent.
It doesn't work that way. That doesn't get you anywhere.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Block.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
Good stuff. You too. So next we've got Brunt. Are you here?
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. Okay, I just wanted to try. I just noticed, I was like, this is really interesting to me. Like, I like what you're doing here.
Good stuff. I'm glad.
Okay, so what I came up here to say, or to argue for, is the ethicality of abortion, and the side I'm taking is that it's unethical.
Abortion is unethical. Ooh, right.
Yes.
I like it when it's stated so strongly. There's no caveats yet. Right, what color can you be, Brunt? You can be yellow. Abortion is unethical. Is that the position?
Yeah, that's mine.
And B-R-U-H apostrophe N apostrophe T. How do you pronounce that?
Oh, mine?
Yeah.
It's just like bruh, but like not bruh.
Brunt.
So brunt.
Brunt.
I like it.
Right. Okay.
Bruh.
Give us your opening pitch for why abortion is unethical.
Okay, I just say that it's unethical because I think that since the fetus is a potential human, I think that it should be afforded, some degree of moral personhood. At least, I think it should be the right to live, I guess. It's a potential human. That's kind of my argument, I guess.
Okay. How to go back to that question that Magnus asked before, is there a limit at which from sort of the sperm meeting the egg, at which we grant it that personhood as a potential human? Sort of, is there a lower limit?
I mean, I guess the very beginning with this argument of potentiality.
So where is that sound? Say again for me. Is that a yes? There is
conception. Yes.
Conception.
Yeah, conception. Yes.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I
the
missed
very beginning.
The conception, the very beginning. So from the very beginning, it's afforded some personhood. Okay. What about if a woman were to unknowingly, but perhaps maybe a bit recklessly, engage in risky behaviour that puts that person, that potential human, at risk? Like, she's not aware that she got pregnant last night. She goes out to the bar tonight drinking.
So she went out to the bar drinking, and she's endangering. Wait, sorry. Can you rephrase that? Like,
So-
can you just say it again?
So I'm asking about somebody who puts that potential human. We've seemed like we've accepted the lowest limit that you would say as a potential human is at conception. So she just conceived last night, and now she's going out to the bar and getting drunk and putting that potential human at risk. Is that a same kind of moral territory? Is that sort of manslaughter where what you're talking about is murder, or not quite?
And she's fully unaware.
Aware or unaware? We could go either way.
Unaware. Is she unaware?
Yeah, could be unaware. Yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of like doing anything unaware. Is it ethical or not ethical? I don't know if that's really the same territory.
Okay. So what about if she did? If she's sort of going to the bar, going, oh, I made some bad decisions last night. Goodness, I really should have, suggested that we use contraception or something, and in some ways is somewhat willingly going, if I'm a little bit kind of relaxed about this, maybe it'll just sort itself out.
So we're saying that if she is aware now,
Yeah, if she was aware.
then I'd say it's unethical.
Okay. So unethical, according to you, are you advocating for laws on this, or are you presenting your position, your personal stance?
No. So I believe I'm pro-choice because I by no means think I am the best person. I think people should be able to make their own choice because I'm not religious here. I think morality is, subjective, but I would just like to say that I personally don't think that it's ethical.
Okay, so you're pro the woman choosing whether she has the kid, and you're going, I want laws and medical infrastructure to support that, is what I'm guessing. You're just going, I'm going to personally think that's a bit of an unethical choice.
Yes, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Are there positions in which you think abortion would be ethical?
The exceptions, I guess, would be if the woman's life is in danger, because it's kind of a trolley.
Sure.
It's kind of like the ethical trolley sort of problem there.
Right. Okay. So potential life versus actual life. The trolley car problem says terminate the potential life. Yep.
Yep. And then I'm a bit iffy on rape. Like that's a bit difficult for me, to be honest. I'm not really sure about that one.
Sure. Not sure about it in what way? As in you would like to not discuss it, which is fine, or?
I'd be willing to discuss it, I guess. I can't really, because not a lot is changing, I guess. Like in the terms of the baby still being, or I guess, sorry, the fetus.
Still being a potential
Still
human.
being a potential human, yeah.
Sure.
But it's just a very difficult situation, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we could see that being a difficult situation, having to look and go, wow, did get some of the features of the father. Got to look at that every day. And the involuntary nature of how that came about. So yeah, I can agree that that's a difficult issue. So you support it, you're pro-choice and you support it. So yeah, I'm trying to think of where to go with this. Rest of the peanut gallery, can you think of arguments or something to make Brunt have to support his position?
I'm actually trying to avoid reading them all just because I'm a very scattered thinker, so I'm trying to remain pretty.
Do you think the government should pay with your tax dollars for women to have abortion if they choose to, regardless of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do support programs, family planning,
socialized programs. Yeah.
Pro-choice, but you think so. But still, you remain it's unethical.
Yeah, I do think it's unethical.
Okay, well, that's pretty fair of him to say that because he's saying it's unethical, but at the same time, he's not going to stop them from doing it. So that's a fair stance.
Excellent. I've got somebody, Peep Questions just asked him one. If we are pro-life, do we continue to support humans wholly past the point of birth to continue their right to life with all basics like healthcare, education, place to stay, etc.? This one from Sea Salt Ice Cream, who's been waiting in the queue a while. I should also let them up on the stage. Go on for that one.
I'll just chime in. That's a different.
Yeah, that's a bit of a different question.
Because now you're talking about raising a child. It's connected but different.
So that's where I would have started with that.
we-
Just pausing, Godric. That's where I would have started. I go, that's absolutely a connected debate, like sort of in the structure of what we're talking about in this session. I would go, that's absolutely connected and it's worth discussing. And then I would say, it's just the order in which you say it is all I'm giving you the feedback on. So rather than that's a different debate, but it is related, it is related and it's a different debate.
Yeah, so I do support a lot of social programs. I'm Canadian. I've seen a lot of the benefits of social programs in my life, and yeah, I'm a supporter of them.
Can I bring a question in?
Sure.
Yep.
So, is it okay to bring a hypothetical?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, say you're in a hospital and someone else is connected to you, and the only way he is to live is for him to be connected to you. Do you think it would be morally wrong to disconnect because of your choice? If
So
it would-
the kind of the violence.
Can you
thought
elaborate what
experiment.
you mean on that? What does that mean? Connected to?
Since because if it should be the right of the woman to take out the child, and you think it's immoral, but then also if somebody would just be, because then again that baby is connected to you kind of on life support from your body.
I'm not sure
Maybe-
your argument. I'm not sure what you're saying. Sorry.
I think I get the gist of it, which is drawing. What it sounds like you're drawing is comparison between having a baby inside you connected to you, or you go to the hospital and for some bizarre reason or mistake you end up connected to another human being, and they say this human being's going to die if you don't allow them to stay connected to you, and that would be a violation of your autonomy. Would you still say it's ethical to make a demand of that human? Is that what you're going with that?
So what I would say in response to that is, I do think it is the person's choice. I don't think you can force the person. Yeah.
Can I maybe fix that analogy and
Sure.
maybe make it more analogous? So think about if you're driving down the road and you rear-end someone, you're both knocked out, it's deemed your fault, and you wake up when that person is biologically connected, you keep them alive. Should the person that caused the accident be obligated to keep that person attached to them for 9 months so that they can fully recover?
Okay, so my answer to that would be, it is your choice. It's like
So just pause here, Brunt. In the style of it, what I would say is summarize and find what you can agree with in what capitalism is saying as the sort of first thing before answering, if you get what I mean. So rather than my answer to that, go, here's what you're saying, here's what's valid to it, and here's how I agree with you. Go for it.
Okay, so you're saying that the person is connected to you. So I think
can restate
that,
it if you like.
Yeah, okay, that'd be helpful.
Okay,
yeah.
sure. So let's say I'm driving down the road. You're in front of me, and I rear-end you. And just whatever circumstance happens, you need to be attached to me based on the damage I did to you from hitting you for 9 months. You have to be biologically attached to me through some futuristic technology. Do you think I am bound to let you stay attached to me since I'm the causal point in this chain for the circumstance that we're in now?
Okay, that's interesting. I don't know, it's difficult because what I was going
I
to
just
say
think
before.
you need to use a real example, just not something just really hypothetical like that. Like we have real.
Yeah, that's
real
it's very
topics.
hypothetical, but I understand what he's saying. It's very difficult because on one hand, you're saying that you are the cause for it. So my initial thing I was going to say before you said that you were the cause for it was kind of the choice whether to be an organ donor or not. You know.
Well,
Where I
it's
support
not that they're
someone to make the
donating
decision.
organs.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
biologically attached to like a cable, some futuristic cable.
Mhm.
You guys are now
But-
attached. So
Oh,
it's
sorry, I
just
didn't
like
mean
the
to say
mother
but.
and the baby. Sure. So it's just like the mother and the baby. You guys are
Mhm.
biologically attached, and you're the reason that they're in that state. Just like the mother is the reason the baby's in that state. Is the person that caused that point in the causal chain morally responsible for the person that can't do without? Because if you take the person off of you, aka life support, they die. And you're the reason they're in that situation, just like if you take the baby out, you've taken
Yeah.
them off of life support when you're the one that caused that in the first place.
Okay, so personally, I would help the person. Like if I cause this crash, I would definitely help them. But I support, a person's choice. Okay, I don't.
So pause. Go
I would
back
say
there.
that a
I
person
would
should
I
make the
would
choice.
help them, but I support a person's right to choose.
Mhm.
So how can both be true in the same Yep, well caught worm spam. the
He's
chat with
saying
butt.
you should do it, but you
Yeah.
can't enforce it. Is what he's saying.
Yeah, I would
Yeah, I'm
say-
just
I would
getting
say
at how can we get there
personally-
without saying but.
Okay, I would say personally, yeah. So personally, I think that I would do it for sure.
Okay. So my original question.
However, I could understand.
So here, so pause here because we don't want to get too stuck on the content of the discussion, which is about abortion. However's just button a tuxedo. Here's
Yeah,
how
I know. I realized.
Hang on.
Using a synonym there.
So
I'm trying to think. Yeah.
I kind of don't want to answer it for you, but I do have an answer ready, so I'm just going to give it to you. This is the bad way to train, but stuff it. I would would help them, and then instead of saying, but I support the right to choose, I would say, I would help them, and what would be important about that is that I was free to. I was free to choose to help them and to choose not to help them. So it's saying basically the same thing. I just switch the word but for and that's a crucial thing to this as a method. You can still think but in your head, just don't say it out loud. Just say and out loud, and people go, yeah, and they're so much more likely to agree.
Right.
Yeah,
Tell me about the bud. I came in later. Tell me about the bud, please. I came in later.
So this is called this is a session is called How to Argue by Agreeing, and the gist is we invite people up here to the stage who have to argue a position that they hold or they might not hold, and deal with us as a peanut gallery who are trying to argue against them to raise a bit of dissonance to get them a bit argumentative so that they say the word but. The goal is how can we find a way to say yes and how can we find a space in which both people's opinions are valid, their concerns reasonable, they're sort of they're smart, I'm smart, you're smart kind of situation. The challenge if we go, I would help them, but it's important that that we support the right to choose. It feels like it's this idea or that idea, and the crucial thing you often find in life, or I have found since using this method, is I find that quite often they are not contradictory. In fact, they are important that they are aligned. Like in this case of having to help somebody in this hypothetical situation, I think it's important that we go, yeah, one might have a responsibility to help them, and we would look upon that person and go, good on you. And we might also, as it sounds like Brunt's talking about, is we might look at somebody who chose to leave that person to die a little bit and go, oh, not sure about that. At the same time, we wouldn't legislate that they had to. And so it could be that both cases are right, that we might in some ways hold a moral judgment, and it's important that we support their autonomy. So we find that the two ideas aren't opposed, they cooperate in many ways.
Right. Can I ask my question for the reason I wanted to get into the call?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, I saw that one. Okay.
Okay. So, and this is probably gonna hopefully throw you in for a loop. So, if your reason here, because you said earlier that morality is subjective, and that's the reason you think you can hold one position and then hold a position that's not consistent with your position. The idea, the law should say something else. Why isn't this true for murder, rape, etc.?
Okay, so I'd say that morality is subjective in the sense that it's kind of relative to what, as a society, we sort of collectively, there's kind of a consensus there. And so I think there's a pretty strong consensus for murder and rape.
Okay, so if it may be 100 years ago, rape was fine, you would hold the position that we shouldn't have laws for rape, and then maybe in other societies you would say that yeah, there shouldn't be any laws about murder because murder's fine.
So if rape were fine, so women were
Yeah, if
okay
society
with it?
viewed rape as something that's okay. There are no laws in the books about rape, and I wouldn't say that abortion is an accepted thing, because it's actually constantly talked about in the Superior Court, Supreme Court quite often.
Yeah.
We only had ruling, a few decades ago, and there are people that are trying to introduce legislation to put it back in it. So I wouldn't say it's something that's accepted. I would think most of the world wouldn't accept it.
Yeah, I wasn't saying abortion is the same as murder and rape.
So
Yeah,
saying
no,
the
but I'm
difference.
saying.
So pause and go
but you're
go
saying
back. Just
society.
hold up, Kappa.
Okay.
What you want to that's another good example of the dissonance causing, where you go, I'm not saying da da da, or you're not hearing me or something. If somebody misunderstands your position, one of the ways you can deal with that brunt is you take responsibility for the misunderstanding, even if you don't agree with it, even if you're like, I think you're twisting my words or something. Don't say that. Not that you were suggesting that of Kappa. I just sort of giving a broad sense where you might go, let me clarify, or I might not have made myself clear, or something like that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so eggshells, just like while we're in a pause here. This is all kind of like, usually when I argue, because I think the best way I can sort of like gather my thoughts is through argument and discussion with other people. And usually when I'm talking about things, it's with friends, or on Discord, it's with people who are they debate often or engage in philosophical discussion often, and so they just like the conciseness, so I don't usually like go around kind of adding those extra words, but I can understand, of course, why talking to someone who you've never really met before, or you have met before and haven't really had this kind of conversation with, these tools would be applicable.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's that, do we have a positive presumption about the other person? If I know them and like them and I've heard them say many things I consider to be true, I will take a more charitable view of whatever they say. They could say something pretty wild and I'd be like, you're joking, right? Or, I want to listen more to understand you. But yeah, there's this challenge that if we've just met somebody, or if we've got some motivated reason to disagree with them or something, that's often where I'll use these a lot more. Excellent.
Maybe
All right.
I can convince you to step away from abortion.
Maybe.
Okay. As like a societal.
We'll go for that one next. There's somebody, sea salt ice cream has come in, and I've also been given a gentle hand on my back to let us know that we're wrapping up soon. So we can probably take the abortion discussion into the sort of the post-show room. I really think he did. I like his honesty. Magnus is saying, I think he did really well. So you want to read the chat there. Lots of people are saying he did very well there. Brunt. So sea salt, you're going to be the last one up to.
That.
You appreciated that block? Say again.
Yeah, I also appreciated that discussion. It went well, even though not everything I agreed with. But I didn't need to. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Yeah. That's a really powerful position to hold, to go, I can enjoy this discussion and get to understand you better, and I don't need that we go zot on this one issue and go, hang on a moment, that we can go, I guess in broad strokes you might be right. And the position I try to come to is, if we disagree on something, the chances I'm right should be lower than 50%. Anytime, but like, if I asked each of you, hey, when was the last time you were in an argument? You would probably say yesterday. And then I said, what was the last time you were in an argument and you realized you were wrong? You'd probably struggle to remember it. And that's just statistically improbable. It's such a really ridiculous the position that I personally still hold. So I try to use this to challenge those biases I have. So Salt C, did you came up for a position to argue, did you, Salt C? Or sorry, Block, were you going to say something else?
I was just pointing out that Marbles just asked a really good question, asking how would you respond to overly exaggerated statements with the yes and method, such as, what if everyone starts having abortions, then the human race would end?
Great one.
Like, I'm
good
assuming
question.
like you're very reactionary kind of stances on stuff, right?
So
like, kind of like a slippery slope.
Yeah, where they'll use sort of argument from hyperbole kind of stuff. There's a few ways I'll handle that. One of the ways is I might just use the yes and go, yeah, absolutely. If it got to the stage where everybody was aborting every child, I think the concern you have is absolutely valid, which is the human race is going to die out tomorrow. So I think if it gets to that point, we would be absolutely in agreement that we've gone, this abortion issue's gone too far. What we're wondering is what's the safe bounds. So that's where I'd bring it back around. Or if they were making an assertion, so rather than a what if kind of question, if they were making an assertion that was similarly like hyperbolic and crazy, I sometimes just repeat it to them as verbatim as I can. I'll be like, everybody getting an abortion? And if it's still got a bit of incredulity there, so it's going to excite a bit of dissonance. And then I might be like, is that something you think you feel is a real concern or something like that? So that they can be like, okay, that might not happen, but we could experience a big crash in population or something where I'll quite often find they go, okay, I was just trying to, I was being a bit reactionary or straw manning your argument or being a bit hyperbolic. I guess what I really mean is this. So, and that's somewhat what's crucial about it is to give them what I've heard described before as a line of social retreat, a line that they can back down behind and go, I don't think that thing I just said, without feeling like they've been made to look an idiot. So if you go, come on, that's ridiculous, they don't have a line of social retreat without accepting, yes, I was just ridiculous, which nobody wants to accept, right? But if you go, okay, so you're probably just being, I think we could agree that this, and that was, they can go, yeah, I was just being hyperbolic, and that gives it an easier place to go back behind.
Regine, did you explain to us how you handle when somebody openly attacks your character or verbal abuse? How you handle that?
So some of my radical view on that is accept it, which sounds really ridiculous, but to go, it's feedback. Somebody's just offered me free feedback. Sure, they chucked it at my face in the form of an insult, and there's some truth to it. Certainly for them, there's some truth to it. So if somebody goes, you're an idiot, I will try to go, what in that is right? And I might be able to come to a position where I go, well, I am probably speaking with a degree of confidence on a topic that's probably highly nuanced and complex, and I would need more data to really be making these decisions. So you're probably right in some ways. If I felt they were making an honest argument from that side, I might agree with it at some stage. But this isn't the only method. That's the point I was making before I want to come back to. This isn't the only method I use. If you catch me around any Discord servers, I love jumping into taking the piss out of people, flat rejecting the assertions that they're making, telling them that I think that their point of view is silly. I don't think this is the only way to have these discussions. I think there can be a lot of fun and a lot more listeners you can get, like a lot more provocative you get, the more people you'll get listening. So I don't think it's the only way to handle it. If somebody's just being a right so-and-so, I'd call them on it. Just go, mate, you're being an absolute prick right now. Like, this isn't helping the discussion. You're the silly one. Yeah, go
on. So how would you handle if you're having a conversation with someone who may not be like fully aware, but they're like really repeatedly making, fallacious, like non-valid arguments, like, as Godric was saying, those were a couple examples, but like, what if they keep doing like different ones,
So, one of the things I would try to do, if this is the difference, if I was trying to make them feel silly, I'd call them on it. If I was trying to convince them or have a fruitful discussion, I would probably let them and acknowledge the truth in those. Because one of the things that's interesting about fallacies, on the one hand, they're a bad way to do reasoning. On the other hand, they're a great way to do reasoning, right? Fallacious arguments are, on their face, really good heuristics for figuring out what's right in the world. You go, argument from argumentum ad populum. You ask 5 people what the time is and they all tell you the same time. It's a good idea to go, it's probably that time they told me it is, right? Even though that's fallacious reasoning, it's a really good rule. Or ad hominem is like, okay, if somebody told you that person's an idiot and they don't know how to tie their shoelaces up, sure, that's an ad hominem attack and I shouldn't disregard their entire thing because they used an ad hominem attack.
Yeah.
But maybe that's also a good way to do our reasoning, that this person isn't an expert in the field and I could defer to somebody. So I would somewhat accept it. I certainly think that the idea of this as a method is you catch more flies with honey. I was chatting the other day with some flat earthers about the 9/11 job and had a really lovely conversation with a guy called Bandsaw where, he he thinks the Earth is flat, and he's a nice guy. He's well reasoned. He's got good reasons to think what he does, and he just comes to a different conclusion than me. And I was like, all I'd said to him was, I think those are some really good questions. I just think that questions aren't answers. I think that what the mindset might do is to go, because I don't have an answer to this question, my answer to that question is therefore valid, i.e. the world is flat and Freemasons are hiding that from us. Now, I then heard him just yesterday go, hey, you were saying to me the other day, Eggshells, that questions aren't answers, and I think that's right. And he's sounding like he might be getting closer to shifting his view, not on the flat Earth, but on a different issue. So I think that's more effective than going, well, that's a fallacy, that's a fallacy, that's a fallacy, like somebody's going to sit there hearing that all of their views are fallacious and then suddenly go, you're right, I am a moron and all of the views I hold are totally unfounded and silly. I should agree with you, person who makes me irritated by your mere presence. I want your, I want your praise and I want you to think highly of me. We don't. We go, well, you were just a dick. So it's in some ways anything we can do to build that rapport and seem like a reasonable person and take the most reasonable estimations of their views is going to be more effective.
Yeah, I feel like pointing out fallacies just, I feel like it's kind of like pretentious almost, or you come off as pretentious.
So if I may butt in just for a second, I never, like in a conversation, if you just start pointing out fallacies and then someone like says, well, can you explain why it's a fallacy, not just the fact that it is a fallacy, you can't do it, then you're just stuck in what's called a fallacy.
Yes, the fallacy.
You're just fallacy, you can't dismiss an argument merely on the basis that is in fact fallacious. You have to be able to explain why it's fallacious.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, of course. I wouldn't just say it's just
and also
it's a fallacy, so therefore it's invalid.
Be true.
Yes, fallacious arguments can be true. They can be a good way of
the reasoning can be bad, but
I would just like I'm more talking about one such as like circular reasoning,
Yeah,
like
well, all deductive arguments are circular, so
it
that
will
may not
help
be a good
you.
one.
So
it will help you to point those out when they're relevant. In a lot of times. And it will help you to do it, and it's helpful to point it out if you are going to call it. I find it's helpful to point it out in a way of like, hey, let's work through this together. Let's see if this is a good way of deciding things. Maybe even have the humility to go, yeah, that's exactly the same way I thought. And then I was wondering, am I just arguing because this is the way things have always been done? So you don't go, that's an argument from antiquity. You go, yeah, I thought the same thing. Like the ancients must have it right. They were onto some ancient wisdom. And then I thought the other side of it, which is, aren't we getting better at figuring out what's right when we have better tools? So I thought, and so I take responsibility for their fallacy and point out times when I've fallen foul of it. Those kind of things. It can come across as disingenuous. It's not about being obsequious and like, hey, you're right too. But it's just about going, if I've got this tool available to me, as well as the tool of calling someone on their bullshit, then from that flexibility of having both styles, I'm going to be far more effective in more of the conversations I'm having. I'm going to be able to match these people with this tool. And if it's not working, switch it out, try a different tool and see if that works.
I also think it's important to think about like what your goal is. Like with the conversation, like if you're convinced to convince the person of your argument, then maybe being confrontive and getting them defensive is counterintuitive. So then it's a good reason to to facilitate like calmness in the conversation, because often it takes more than one session. And then if you leave the first session like with that person being like angry, that when they think about you, maybe in between the sessions, they will have a negative.
Yes.
And
they will likely demonstrate avoidance behaviors. If you make somebody feel negative affect, you will likely evoke avoidance behaviors in them, which is, I don't want to talk to that person anymore. The only way I will engage with them is hearing somebody else tear their viewpoint down. So that's kind of the point. I'm mindful I've got to wrap up now after continually saying I was going to give Sea Salt Ice Cream a go at it. So I'm going to pass over to Sea Salt. You wanted to present a case, did you?
Yes, and before that, join the server.
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah, so this is you've for anybody who's found us off that Find a Stage thing, you've found Chatterbox, the Chatterbox server. This is a great place. You can find all these funny places where people chat and they have lovely conversations and interesting sort of philosophical or political discussions in a really nice way. So it's really well worth joining the server, and you'll find out about more of these events in future. And then we're going to pass over to Sea Salt, who's going to give us a short last argument where he's going to do the tools we've been using all along to create more assonance, which is to use yes and. Right, what's your position, Sea Salt?
Well, I'm gonna try. I'll be straight up and honest to begin with. When I debate, I definitely trend towards being much more, I guess, kind of aggressive, or at least like matching the other person, unless they do start using fallacies or being not good faith. Then I sort of like devolve into,
So you let somebody else being bad at arguing make you be bad at arguing. That sounds like a fun strategy.
Sometimes I feel like my reasoning there, I just am more loose with being degrading. But so my topic is about veganism, something I feel very strongly about. My position would be for pretty much everyone in a developed nation. There is no ethical way to eat other than veganism. So that's where I would land. I don't know if through argument, I don't tend to be like as assertive of that statement, but I'm willing to go from there.
Sure. So I grew up partially on a cattle farm, and I've gone hunting, including killing rabbits for sport. Is that okay, provided I don't eat them? Is that an ethical behavior?
I think we would have to look at our ethical systems to determine so. Would you, my postulation would be, would you go out and hunt? Did you have any animals that you considered pets growing up? Would you do the same to your dog?
I certainly, it's a good question. I certainly wouldn't go and hunt a dog or something, a pet for sport. It's more that they're an invasive species here, and they are in competition with our stock, which is how we get our money. They eat the grass that could go into a cow or a sheep's belly, and they also push out local fauna. So I think it's okay to kill rabbits for sport. That I'm deriving enjoyment seems secondary. The main reason is we need to do pest control.
And your individual contributions to this are going to be the thing that makes the biggest impact over other potential more wide-scale systemic solutions?
No, I'm a very bad. I was going out with a bow. I only got one. No, so it was a very weak. My overall contribution, as you put it, very low. Didn't help much at all.
Yeah, so I guess I would just say if you seem to have at least some standard where, hey, like this is my dog, this is my pet, I love them on this level. I wonder if there would be a way to then extend that outwards to other species and animals in a way that perhaps it would be like more practical to approach problems like these, just on a wider, more systemic level. But individually, are you, I don't know if we're like just role playing for the argument, but are you a meat? Do you?
Eat I do consume meat. What's interesting is I agree with despite being a meat eater, I agree mostly with your position, which is I do it, although I accept that most meat is harvested by means that I generally consider to be unethical. I think the battery farming of chickens is utterly awful. I think that we've got fairly happy cows on our farm, but happy cows are a minority. Most of your hamburgers come from pretty unhappy cows. So from an ethical standpoint, I think I agree with you. I just still eat the meat.
Did I just get owned in this argument because now we agree? I don't know. But I think that is sort of like my main one of my main points, I guess I would say, is to try to push more towards that sort of recognition of, hey, I see that, factory farming is probably a very, at least brutish act, if nothing else. But what compels you to continue to eat meat? Do you not see your consumption as being related to the harm that is caused on these factory farms?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I absolutely see that. It's a behavior I have that I'm not able to justify ethically.
I guess from here, I'm not exactly sure where to go, but so if you're saying you can't ethically justify it, so if I were to perhaps rephrase it, you are okay, or there might be like some like sort of things we might want to like examine further, but are you okay with that treatment of these animals?
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to this. I think the point you make is completely valid. When I've tried to go low meat or no meat, or I really struggle.
Is it a taste thing that you struggle with? Is it monetary or access, or just like not knowing necessarily like
It's
how?
a taste thing. Like I really, really, really love steak. I think some of it's cultural. Like my parents would virtually disown me if I turned up to the next thing going, I don't eat meat. But I'd certainly think from listening to it's something that I probably need to investigate further. And because what you've pointed out is my ethics and my behavior don't align. I don't think I could make the step straight away to veganism, but what I could be willing to do is go, maybe I'm going to make steps towards lowering my consumption in line with ethical consumption. Would that be a happy medium to reach to agree on?
I think that is actually what I would argue. That's not even a medium. That is what I would argue for. Because my journey towards veganism was also not, a right away type of thing. Yeah, I actually accidentally became vegetarian at first. It wasn't a conscious choice. It just happened to align like with my eating habits. And then over time, I looked into, environmental impact, which is the main thing that brought me over. But now I definitely have a lot of sympathy for the ethical treatment of animals too. But
hopefully not the people for the ethical treatment of animals. Hopefully you don't support PETA. You're not a PETA-phile, are you? Sorry, that was a joke about PETA. I wasn't actually accusing somebody of pedophilia.
That's a good one. That's a good thing to use in debates to sort of like lighten the mood, it seems, or bring people over. But I'm not a pedophile, but sympathetic.
Nicely done. Yeah, very good. All right, excellent. Last thoughts, then we wrap up. Tell us your last thoughts.
I just am concerned because most debates do not go like this, right? People are they hold on so staunchly to and refuse to recognize that sort of irreconciliation between ethics and behavior. And that's where I am just not exactly sure how to move forward on debates like these.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one because I think I've often wondered why so many vegan debates devolve to trolling, to being like, oh, big fat juicy steak, and people start spamming images of murdered animals in the chat and something. And I think most of the place it comes from is people recognize that there is not really a rational argument one can make about why a chicken is food, but a budgie is a pet. Short of budgies would be too labor intensive to eat, maybe. I don't know. I think it's really good. I think
mechanism.
Yeah, they go, I recognize this is bad, but I won't actually recognize that the dissonance will fire up first, and then I'll want to throw out their argument or troll it or disengage in some way. And that's some of the difficulty you will have with arguments. The stronger and better they are, that's in some ways the harder they get to argue. So that what you did there in that debate to sort of shift your position when I said, well, what about this? What about if I can keep eating meat, but this can happen? That can be a really good way to do it, which is I start with a bigger claim and then I let us through negotiation work to a more reasonable ground. I think it can work the other way, which is if the first claim is $2,000, people just go, oh, that's ridiculous. Whereas, had you started off with, I think with worldwide, we should cease meat production tomorrow, I think a lot of people would go, huh? That's a bit silly. Whereas if you go, all we're talking about is reducing it, think more about the ethics behind where that stuff's coming from so that you can... And then the other thing I would attach, we haven't talked about much in this, is attach positive emotions to your outcomes. So to go, I think you'll feel more comfortable. I think you'll possibly even feel more healthy, and you'll feel really like, hey, I'm doing a solid while also eating this chicken sandwich because I was mindful about where it came from or something. So you go, yeah, awesome, we agree, and then you feel good about agreeing.
So even if like ethically it could probably be argued that it would be better to like cease everyone eating meat by tomorrow, the practicality of it should probably take more precedence because that's where common ground can most likely be reached.
Yeah, Yeah, I think in essence. I don't mean misrepresent your view, which I'm big on. Be honest with people, tell people what you really think unless you make it clear you're sort of role-playing or having a crack. But yeah, certainly to go, if my goal is reducing the suffering for animals, then holding an extreme view that makes people not even join the conversation, which continues the same rate of suffering of animals, seems to me just not an effective way to behave. Whereas to say, okay, I recognize that people are going to not agree with that extreme view, so I'm going to offer them steps on smaller alternatives, things they might be willing to do. Because it's called the foot in the door technique in terms of persuasion. Get them to agree to something small and then come back later and go, okay, what about cutting chicken out altogether? Because chicken's a real problem here for the environment and in terms of ethical consumption. So would you be willing to start moving on to beef and other things? And if they've agreed to a previous premise and have done actions in line with that, like started asking where these eggs come from, then they will be much more likely to take a bigger step later on. This is like the escalation of commitment bias or sunk cost fallacy, or it's all called in persuasion the foot in the door technique. Excellent.
Is there,
sorry,
I know you're saying things need to go, but is there any questions or something? Because I can't like read along and like pay attention to what you're saying. Is there anything that popped up that would be interesting to address?
I think from there we might wrap up that discussion. We can continue it again. I think what we're going to do is drop down into one of the voice chat channels here, and we can certainly continue that discussion. It's just I've been politely asked by the mods to clear the stage so they can, so other people can step in. So I think I better do that. But we can certainly join in on that discussion or any of the ones. Chill VC Kappa's telling me we're going to. So if you look here in the server list here, it's called the Chill VC, and Capitalism stepped in. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been a really fun session. We've had quite a few people here. What have we got? 80 people listening. Awesome. I'm famous, Mum. Check me out.
Having me on, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Radian.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Yeah, join the channel. Make sure you join the Chatterbox channel. I'm also going to start up a Discord server that is based around how can we have rules following these discussions. If you'd like that, just click on my name and send me a PM asking for the channel invite, and I can send that to you. I'm not able to put it in Chatterbox's ones because then I get banned again by the auto mod. Otherwise, join again. I'm going to keep working on how we use this format because I think it's a really fun format to have interesting discussions. So keep an eye out for more stages popping up again soon. Subscribe to the YouTube and the Twitch so you can watch it as well if you want to watch how I'm sort of capturing people's claims and answers and questions on this Jamboard here. And otherwise, we'll see you again soon. Thanks again very much to the Chatterbox crew. Now I'm going to try and find how to shut down this stage. I can only report the stage. Godric, are you a Modric? I think Ryan... This is a bit where I stuff around looking like a moron. Trying to figure out how to close everything down. 41 people still listening to me fuddling around trying to close this stage. Maybe if I close the stage, it'll just close.